pretty fucked up.
Either high or fucking each other.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of like this show. Wait. What?
That's how we got on the topic.
That's how you got on it? Wait.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey. Who said that? Wow.
I trust you guys have met before.
We have.
Okay.
Yes.
We've actually been on a panel together before.
Good.
We have.
On
DEF CON. DEF CON.
Oh,
Well,
right.
you guys were the star of the panel. I was just the moderator.
Right.
Yeah, you guys did all the work.
Yeah.
It was my panel, but you guys did the work, so it was your panel. And good times were had by all.
Are we talking about the Brady Bunch
or
again?
something?
Yeah, we need the effect where, you know, each of us kind of spins into our own little square.
It's a story of a man named Brady bringing up 3 boys of his own.
We need
Only if it's face down in
we
bed.
need more chicks in the Brady Bunch, though. I feel like I'm
Face down in bed.
probably not in the best position.
That's what she said. Wow.
So, do you want us to talk about anything specific, like?
Checky check,
Just-
mic
We have,
1.
like, a
Check,
list
check,
of
check.
things?
Check, check, check. Check, check,
Like,
check.
just personal stuff.
Check, check. Check, check. Check, check, check. How's that, Riley? Doing all right for you? Is it good for you? Right into your ear pussy? Thank
Good
you.
for me.
Woo! Wow. All right. I'm so disappointed. I used to be able to type in. Hold on. Whoa. I used to be able to type in wiki into my browser, and wiki.securityweekly was the one that would show up first. It doesn't even show up on the list anymore.
That's all right. There's nothing there.
No. Which I actually have to do because I'm going to teach Sans class next week, and like if you type by, like YouPorn is the first one. I'm like, no, in front of class. Ain't nobody got time for that. Come on now.
But you're teaching in DC, right, Larry?
Yes.
And it's just Joff that got sent to the hinterlands.
Yes.
I meant to ask, are there any rules like don't mention your employer or like no swearing or anything like that we have to stick to?
I don't think you're allowed to swear.
You can fucking mention any employer you choose to.
Okay.
How's that?
We're on a
Well,
we're on a
like
7-second delay, so we can edit everything.
No, we're on like a 7-hour delay.
Delay.
You guys can say whatever. Paul, am I correct in that you guys can say whatever the hell you want?
Hello. Oh, hey, hi. This
You
is
can
Paul.
say fuck, but you can't say balls.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can.
But only if
That's
you
gonna
use
be
the.
really.
but
That's
you
gonna be
can-
really difficult.
But you can say fuck and balls in the same sentence. You just can't use
No.
them independently.
It's PG-13, so that means if you say fuck, you can only say it like once. But if you want to
Is
say
it once per person or like?
yeah, I think once all together, and then if you say you can say shit like twice.
What the fuck? When did it
If
become
you're-
fucking
but
PG-13?
Only if you're not saying fuck, and then PG-13 allows for brief nudity. Brief nudity.
Not it.
So if I say I'm gonna fuck the shit out of you while I'm naked, it's okay?
As long as you don't
That
do
might
it on
work.
camera.
That might- only if you're naked for a short period of time.
Well, I mean, it's not gonna take very long.
I'm starting to feel like I'm going to have technical
Yeah.
difficulties.
Riley, I'm at a loss for words right now, so I'm going to have to do my best. But do you,
That's like.
do you, I mean, do you
it's
like
like
the
that
placement
naked
of the mic,
news.
Riley?
Naked news? Yeah, I like naked
All right.
news.
Yeah.
The hack naked news?
Yeah, the good news is I before I hosted it, I actually watched an episode and I realized I had to put my clothes back on, which is good. I
Awkward.
would have fucking killed our ratings. I would've-
Awkward. Or made it better. I mean,
Pretty sure.
pretty sure
So
all this
Lee,
vodka's
Lee
gonna
and
kill
Amanda, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey.
You see to fit in.
me. Yeah. See, Paul. My problem is that I can't drink with my pinky out because, like,
It's awesome. Did I light it? A cigar?
if you did, you put it down on the table, not the ashtray. Danger, Will Robinson.
I did put it down. It wasn't lit yet. Thank you.
Phew. All right. Am I missing something on this template? Because there's no place to put my stories in.
There's no security news unless it's been put up in the last minute.
It hasn't.
Mr. Man.
Somebody's slacking.
No, I have.
Hey,
It
what's
just,
up, Santa?
it just says template 536.
Did it not?
It did not.
It did not.
PP Works didn't do its job
No, that's not in PV Works yet.
yet. Because I do have some news to add. I'm just
Oh,
going to actually
I have.
do it.
That's awesome because I have none.
I don't think there was any.
No, there
got
isn't.
anything done.
I was reading from
Yeah,
the.
well-
You got to refresh.
I literally just loaded the page.
You got to edit the page and put a space in it and then save it. My template's there because I was reading from my template when I read my
We can
stories.
talk about the Facebook revenge porn stuff.
Oh, the template's wrong. Hold on. It's PSW Paul 536 is the name of the template. Someone made a boo boo. I think it was John. Sorry, he's fired. It's fine. Just kidding, John.
This time.
All right, now they should be there.
Yes.
Yay! Oh, there's no heading for Paul though, of course.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't add that. I just fixed my template.
Okay, I'll fix it.
That's not bad, Paul.
Yeah. So, what do you think of a dirty martini? All right, are we ready to get started? Sorry, we'll talk about that on the show because it's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's fine.
Yeah, let's
Jeff,
roll.
and is not Kevin on the lines too? Oh wait, we were supposed to call him. Fuck. Hey, who invited Kevin? Oh, I thought you invited Kevin. I thought you invited Kevin.
Well, he's called not Kevin for a reason.
Because he's
Not
not
fucking
yet.
here.
He's not here.
He's not fucking here. Kevin's not here. Man. Oh,
Is Kevin even really his name? It's probably not even his name.
It's not Kevin.
snot, Kevin.
It's not Kevin.
Yeah, let me get to a quieter spot.
That sounded like it's not Kevin.
Amanda, are you there?
I am.
Hey, I'm a fan of the Breaking Down Security podcast, but
Really? You've heard of us?
between us girls, I only listen when you're on, and I'm not just saying that because I really do. Like, if you're not on, I'm like, I got to go back and find the episode that she's on. So you have to make a concerted effort to make sure that you show up and you're on the show. So
I will try. Thanks.
You'll see your listenership go up by a total of 1 on those episodes.
that's right.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Don't tell Brian I said that though.
I'm gonna ask for a raise now.
You should.
Yeah.
Hello, Internet.
Wait,
Holy
you get
shit!
paid?
It's not Kevin.
Hi.
What's going on, not Kevin?
Oh, living the dream. How is everybody?
We're fantastic. Hey, we're just getting ready to do a show, so we'll exchange.
It's good catching up with you on Skype. How the fuck are you? All right, we can do a show now.
We're gonna do a show.
About?
We'll commence with the pleasantries once we start because we need to
Come on
start
now.
because now we're 3 minutes late.
Claire.
That's
Mhm.
good.
It goes good
combo's
with beer too, which is interesting.
I'm not gonna be able to. figure that
I
out.
know. I haven't had it with that. What is the gluten? Is it Sojorum? Gluten-free beer?
It's made out of sorghum.
Sorghum?
Yeah.
What's Sojorum? A planet in a sci-fi movie I watched
It's a,
once.
type of,
apparently.
it's a different type of wheat.
I think it was the third moon of planet.
And Endor's third moon. That's no moon.
You know, I just realized when I'm home, I can like mute shit because I'm not on camera really.
Yeah, we don't have cough buttons yet.
Yeah.
We also don't
The
have
best
scratch
thing
your balls
ever.
buttons either.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Can you
Quiet on
just-
set. Oh,
Can
sorry.
you just pan up?
I've never done 15 seconds of silence ever.
This week, Amanda Berlin and Lee Brotherston from what does that say? Why did you guys put the teleprompter so far away?
Dude, where's your glasses?
Wealthsimple, our special guest for this evening, our good friend Farah Mavatuna from Netsparker will deliver the technical segment. And in the security news, we're going to talk about stuff. Oh, that stuff I have here, and I can actually read it. Ex-NSA director says that we should never hack back. Many are, including Marissa Mayer, are summoned before the Senate for a hearing on the breaches, not just Yahoo breaches, but multiple breaches. Mr. Robot was kind of interesting. There was some name dropping that we'll talk about. And Microsoft DDE attacks, those are fun. Can't wait to talk about that. No jail time for a botnet creator because he promised to go straight, apparently. I don't know what sexual preference has to do with getting out of jail. Anyway, hacking of fingerprint biometric, stealthy PLC hacks, and hackers were hired for a year-long DDoS attack against a former employer. All that and more on this edition of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. Excited to be here, as always, on Paul's Security Weekly.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I totally introduced our host right now, but I've got a totally awkward boner.
What? Where? Oh, hey! I'm in the studio with you guys. That's kind of cool.
Sounds like a plan.
And we'll at least have one person listening.
That's right.
Just saying.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad you enjoyed your spooning with Jeff. But
Hey, that's
actually built a new office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, third baby on the way, so I needed a new office.
Nice.
I lost my old office. That's now the baby room.
Brought to you by... Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason, disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/Security Weekly and use the code SW30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a guy that's jumped naked on the bed with that guy that works with Craig on the Q4 push, Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to... That's my claim to fame, really. Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode 536. It is, in fact, Thursday, November 9th, 2017, and I am excited about the show because there is a lot of exciting things going on with those hosting the show with me. For one, we have someone who's never been in studio for a show, ever. and has hosted lots of shows with us. To my left, there is none other than Mr. Michael Santarcangelo.
It's exciting to be here.
It's weird. It's so cool.
And it doesn't even look like Santa Claus in a can of Jello.
No Jello.
Santa
it's
Jello.
It's totally. It's not as awkward as I thought it was going to be.
No, this is comfortable.
It's only because he's not sitting on your lap.
I showered, just so we're clear.
It's good.
With soap. I use soap. So we're okay.
In lots of places.
You've got boys. You have to ask. Maybe they're not old enough. Did you take a shower? Yes. Did you remember to use soap?
Did you go back?
Go back.
See, I don't have that problem. I have a 10-year-old girl. Go shower. Okay.
Yeah.
And like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you washed your hair yet?
The hot water must be done.
No, we have a 50-gallon hot water tank because we have a hot tub. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Mr. Larry Pesci is here.
I am
with us.
It's been a couple of weeks.
You're in the evil crime lord chair tonight.
Yes.
Nice.
And I will apologize that I do not get to drink my drink with my pinkies out tonight because, well...
So you got some kind of injury going on.
Yeah. This was the cardio injury from a month ago.
Oh, still healing.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that works out for you.
Eventually. I mean, it makes it hard to do the stranger because...
Yeah, you can't show me your wonderful hand gestures. Well,
I mean, I give you the thumbs up, but... Give up.
On the lines via Skype, I'm so excited. The triumphant return of none other than Mr. Jeff Mann. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, well, Jeff's here, too. Jeff, welcome to the show. Well, because they're on the same Skype machine, so I couldn't introduce them. I had to. Jeff is here. Jeff, it's wonderful to have you. You've been on Skype and in studio, and you're awesome. So,
yes, and Kevin has been not here for way too long because he's just giggling like a schoolgirl for everything
Kevin
that goes on.
Is actually
so
here
still
with
doing
us. He is here with us. Not Kevin. It's so nice to have you back.
Well, thanks for allowing me to come back after my sabbatical on the internet.
I heard you were kidnapped by ninjas, apparently.
Yeah,
clown ninjas.
Twice. In between there, you joined a cult or something.
Yeah, cult of good Wi-Fi.
Damn, tell me more.
I know, huh?
Tell me more.
Oh boy,
I'll subscribe to your newsletter.
Oh, you'll get it. No matter if you subscribe or not.
I miss Kevin's quick-wittedness. It's nice to have you back. Make sure you do two things for us. Subscribe to our mailing list at securityweekly.com/insider. You can get all the exclusive updates, all of your awesome invites to all of the awesome webcasts that we do, and we've got some special things that I think we're going to pull off next year.
It's been a good week of planning.
Yeah, I mean, so the webcast program, like, there wasn't a whole lot of, like, John Strand and I were just like, we're going to do webcasts. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, we're going to do webcasts. And we did a lot of webcasts. And then people were like, wow, can we get a little less email about webcasts? And we're like, we should probably do some planning. So if you're subscribed, there is a plan to not oversubscribe people. But I do thank everyone who's been joining. It was an awesome webcast we did today with Doug White and Jonathan
Yeah,
Sander.
that was
Want to learn about file systems? That's the webcast for you.
And be entertained, right? Edutainment.
It's edutainment
it was
for sure.
Packed, and it was fun to listen to. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good. So, and then you can go to securityweekly.com/subscribe because the other thing we do here is we have lots of other shows such as Startup Security Weekly that Michael and I co-host together. Mostly Michael hosts. I just show up and have fun and talk shit.
Say the other way.
That's kind of what I do. Michael does all the hard work of prepping for that show and talking to startups and bring them on the show, which is great. We've got Enterprise Security Weekly with John Strand and myself. Secure Digital Life with Doug White. I mean,
it's a blast.
How do you put into words the Dr. Doug White, like his?
Well, it was great because I got to meet Doug today because he was on that webcast, and what I loved was
it's the same Doug White you see on Secure Digital Life.
Yeah, I mean,
just a few more swears in real life.
He's taller,
he's taller.
And I'm probably shorter than people expect. But he's on his way out, and we got talking about artificial intelligence, and like an hour later, he's like, "Oh, I guess I probably got to go now." So I almost got him on the program tonight to be here with us.
You were close. You're close. Try harder next time.
I'm trying.
Hack Naked News. So all of those, you can go to securityweekly.com/subscribe. Subscribe to all of our shows. There's more new shows being created. You'll hear more about them. Okay. Now, on to our feature interview for the program. Amanda Berlin is here. She's a senior security analyst at Networks Group, co-host of Breaking Down Security podcast it's my favorite podcast when Amanda's on, and has been, and no disrespect to the others on the show. I just like it when Amanda's on the program. She's been an IT professional for over 13 years. She spent over a decade in different areas of technology and sectors, providing infrastructure support, triage, and design. She is the co-author of the Defensive Security Handbook, Best Practices for Securing Infrastructure. And we'll introduce the lead next. But Amanda, welcome to the program.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going.
That was like the best intro I've ever had.
Oh, that's very flattering. Thank you.
Paul can travel with you if you want.
That's right. I could.
I would like to have somebody, just introduce me every time I walk into a room. That's my goal in life.
Garcon, come introduce me.
You just get that video clip on your phone and just be like, hey, here's who I am, and it can just be me talking. It's cool. Lee Brotherston is a security specialist at what? I can't read that. Is it Wealthsimple?
Yes, it is.
Is that a shower curtain behind you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just checking. Lee has worked within information security for over a decade. In that time,
I can hear the production guys in the back room roaring.
He's hanging out in the back room.
Because they know our set isn't much better.
Our set is exquisite.
Well, I have a story about the shower curtain set.
What this means is he's sitting on the commode.
It could be. Lee has held positions in the bathroom, as well as ranging from hands-on practitioner through management with an overall responsibility for information security in multiple organizations. He's spoken on topics ranging from malware analyst to network security and surveillance. Lee, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
I'm waiting for someone to peek out and be like, "Hey, can you grab me a towel?" we at one time did have a set that it was actually curtains, but people thought they were shower curtains, and we just kind of went with it. It's the shower curtain set. It was for our cigar podcast where we had to go to my workshop, which had all tools hanging up and stuff. So to cover that up, I put up essentially shower curtains. So, dude, I'm right there with you. It's cool.
Yeah. Except this one really is a shower curtain.
That's right. It's actually a shower behind there, which is kind of nice. Oh boy. So I'm gonna go back to Amanda for a moment. Amanda, I want to ask you and Lee both the same question. You can go first. Alphabetically, your first name is first. Let's just say that's the reason.
Ladies first, you're a gentleman.
Ladies first, that too. Amanda, how did you get your start in information security?
Oh gosh, I think it's a start that a lot of people have. I started in the help desk. I had planned on going into the Marines and was one of those teen pregnancies gone wrong. So I skipped the Marines, went in, I decided, I'm really good at computers, so I'll go ahead and go to college for that. Worked my way through help desk at ISPs, at healthcare, started studying for Microsoft and Cisco certifications, and then security just kind of fell into my lap when I was doing, sysadmin and netadmin stuff. And then I just started focusing on that the last 4 years or so.
What was your first certification?
A+.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that where if somebody came to you now, they're in high school, they're interested, where would you tell them to start?
No, hold on, back up.
I'm sorry.
Don't talk about certifications, because the way Amanda got started is how I recommend that people get started. And you said it. You started at the help desk, learning how stuff works, right?
And that's the best way, I think, to start is help desk and sysadmin stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You just understand how everything works, and that not every security solution that's out there can be implemented in enterprises.
And you have to learn how to talk to people too. And
yes.
If they're calling the help desk, it's not always like, "How are you today?" "I'm fantastic, thank you. Everything's working perfect. I can't wait to talk to you." They're not typically happy when they're calling you.
Right. Yeah, and working help desk at a hospital, you're always dealing with doctors, which lots of type A personalities,
yes.
So you really have to learn how to handle them.
Yeah, my other one on the doctor side was working help desk with lawyers, and also working help desk with higher educators. Mm. And the best part was when you had lawyers who are higher educators. Mm-hmm. Oh. Those were almost as bad as doctors.
Lee, how did you get your start in information security?
It's not completely different. I did the usual go to school, go to university route, and then got a job at a local ISP. And it was a tech support / sysadmin / network guy. And exactly like you said, spent time on the phone, spent time debugging Cisco, spent time messing around with desktops and whatever, and then turned out to have an aptitude for security and kind of fell into it from there. I'm of the vintage where there weren't really InfoSec degrees so much, so that wasn't really a route in at that time.
You know, when you say aptitude, one of the things I've always found fascinating is that I've often described we don't see the world the same way. So when you say aptitude, like how would you explain the aptitude?
That's a command in Debian that I run to update packages. Oh, sorry.
No, so yeah, it's things like naturally thinking, thinking through how something works and how you might abuse that or make it act in a way that it shouldn't. And I think not everybody thinks that way. It's like people that look at locks and think, oh, there's a way to break into that, or look at business processes and there may be a way to circumvent it, or laws or whatever, and this is the technology equivalent. You look at how things function and think, I may be able to make it work in a way it was not intended. And yeah, I did that and it transpired to work out.
Was that a natural mindset for you? And were you surprised when other people don't think that way?
I think it's fairly natural. I mean, I played with computers a lot as a kid, and there was a lot of trying to work out how things worked from the point of view of just trying to get stuff to work. You know, back when you were cobbling machines together from like computer fairs and whatever, and then maybe semi-legit software you're trying to get to run properly and that kind of thing. And then when you're in the workplace, people have been very much sort of conditioned that this is the way you do a thing and that's it. And I think that security people generally have but what if I try this? What if I try that? Let's see what that does kind of attitude and you know, sort of notice that you can affect things in different ways.
Now, I want to ask you both, Amanda and Lee, we'll talk about the book in a little more detail, but at some point you collected experiences that led you both to co-author a book on that you titled the Defensive Security Handbook. So what experiences in your career were the most helpful or influential that eventually led up to you writing the book?
Definitely time and time again walking into an enterprise that everything was broken and everything was on fire, and working through you know, creating a more stable and more secure environment over and over again.
Nice. Lee, how about for yourself?
For me, I think it was a combination of two things. I did do a period of time where I was consulting, and I've also been like the first security person in a company. And one of the working titles that I had on the book was "Surprise, You've Inherited a Security Department," which I really didn't go for. But yeah, it's a lot of companies seem to get we've got to this size and perhaps we should do a security, and then they sort of stop there and go, wait, how do we do that? And that was kind of the thinking, was that the book would fill that what do we do next kind of gap.
Wow. I wish I had that book when I started. Similarly, like, you're the security person, right?
Now, how did you guys...
I got the book. I got the pamphlet of poof, now you're a manager.
Yeah.
Hey, you got a pamphlet?
I did. I had to find it on the internet myself, though.
Pretty high tech. How did you guys meet? I mean, writing a book is not an easy task by yourself with a partner. So did you guys know each other beforehand? And was this one of your crazy ideas? Or tell us how you guys got together to write the book.
I think we both had the idea at around the same time because our publisher actually introduced us to each other. Okay. We were writing for probably 3 or 4 months before we actually met in person.
That's awesome.
Wow, you were writing a book and you met your co-author in person? Wow.
Right.
It was like
I mean, we Skyped and stuff.
3 hours before we met in person?
Yeah. Oh, boy. So when I look at the title, so where I wanted to start actually was a little bit of marketing about the book, because somehow you've convinced
most security people on Facebook to hold this book up and take a picture. And I want to know how you, from a social engineering perspective, were able to do that, because I think it's marketing genius.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea why people started doing it, but I got this book, because you're writing the book, and it doesn't seem super real. It's all online. We're writing it in O'Reilly's, custom, horribly written writing app, and I finally get this box of books, and it becomes a little bit surreal. So I just took a picture of myself holding up the book, and it just kind of snowballed from there, and everybody started doing it, and it was the best marketing ever.
That's awesome. Like I actually don't have a copy of the book. I'm going to purchase one.
Look at me, Paul. Look at me.
I'm going to purchase one and put a picture up on.
Yeah, and not Kevin. Not Kevin just got up from his desk, so I suspect he's going to get his copy of the book
of it.
Yeah, as well. So
he's stealing it from like a coworker or something.
So we'll have to pan
He's
back
leaving
to
them
the
a note.
Skype
It's not
call.
Kevin.
It's not.
Yeah, we'll have to pan back to the Skype call.
I don't know who took the book, but it's not Kevin.
And going back to like the beginning of my security career, I think Kevin actually taught one of the first security classes I ever took.
Wow, look at that. We come full circle.
Yep.
We're good like that.
What types of, when I see Defensive Security Handbook, like I'm like, wow, you guys bit off a lot, right? Like there's a lot. You have a lot of places you could go. I've thought myself like what a handbook would look like, and just deemed it like I'm like I don't know if I could do that. But you folks were ambitious and did that. So what are some of the foundational elements? I mean, obviously it's not, hey, go buy all these security solutions and hey, you're secure, right? I guess that would be more like a cookbook rather than a handbook. But given it's a handbook, there are what are the foundational elements?
I think the main thing we did was we broke it down into the main areas. So there's 21 chapters, and each chapter covers a high-level area. So there's one that's policies, one that's vulnerability management, one that's patching, that kind of thing. So they don't deep dive any of them. You won't be a subject matter expert in vuln management because, it's a chapter, but it should give enough a flavor for people to realize if it's something they want to do and if they should go and read further on a topic. So they're all kind of standalone in that sense. And we've tried to give recommendations of what to do, but like you said, it's not all blinky box stuff. So we haven't gone and recommended a bunch of commercial solutions. There are a number of open source and free items available, and we've given suggestions on the sort of criteria you might want to look at, but we haven't prescribed this is what your security program looks like. It's more, you should think about vuln management, you should have Active Directory configured, you should patch Unix boxes, etc., etc.
And so it sounds like, you guys have a lot of experience. So it sounds, too, like when you're writing a handbook like this, you're not trying to write it for the handbook for 2017. Maybe it'll apply in 2018. So did you have to go back and forth and really think about your collective experience to say, these are things that we've come across pretty much consistently for the last decade, and we can see them being challenges for the future?
Right, yeah, I think so. Taking vuln management and patching for a second, I worked as a consultant, and part of that was doing incident response, and the number of incidents that are simply like terrible configuration and patching. I think that a lot of people focus a lot on worrying about all the 0 days and all the blinky boxes, and if they just got the basics nailed, I think a lot of organizations would be way better, and that's kind of the approach we were taking.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Michael.
Nope. Your turn.
No, okay. I'll comment then. I think that's absolutely right, and I think maybe nowadays the barrier for that the basics maybe has increased a little bit, but still not all that much. I still think the basics are there.
Well, and what I like about it, right, and I think I've said this on the show, and I've certainly chatted about this with you guys. If somebody says the basics, I always go, "What do you mean?" But what I like is you've taken the time to distill that. So at least now we got a list. And 21 chapters, that might be a lot. But if you're thrust into that position and you're trying to figure out which way is up, it sounds like a really good starting point for somebody to read it, get their head wrapped around it, and then figure out where to go. That's
there was so much
that's
innuendo
something a lot of us would have liked.
There was so much innuendo in that.
I don't even know what that word means.
There's lots of thrusting and make sure you're going the right way and head. And Sorry, I'm all verklempt.
There was a lot of thrusting.
I'm all sweaty now.
But you feel good, right?
I do. I mean, what's not to feel good about?
Well, my job here is done.
Of those 21 topics, which ones are most difficult for people to grasp and actually implement?
My top one is asset management, hands down.
That's a good one.
I've never seen it done correctly. I've heard of people doing it correctly. I've just never seen it done correctly.
But on the internet, right?
So there's unicorns. Yeah, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Lee, how about for you?
What's hardest? I honestly, I think just having patching sorted still seems to be ridiculously hard for people.
I think recent news would bear that out.
Well, I think having patches to apply is important too.
Well, yeah.
Well, so on the same topic, I always find when you write, you learn, there's always some surprise. What was the biggest surprise? And we'll say from a subject matter perspective. So you set out, you had outlines, you worked back and forth, you're writing, and a lot of times you make a connection you didn't have prior. You come up with a new insight. What were the insights that each of you took out of writing this book that at the end you went, oh, that's more important, less important? I don't know what bubbled up in the process of creating this handbook.
Oh gosh, I want to say I probably learned the most doing the compliance and framework chapter. I didn't realize all the little nuances and the other small compliance standards that were out there, like FERPA and that kind of stuff that a lot of people need to worry about. That I never had I never had to think about. I was always concentrated on PCI and HIPAA.
But wait, it says it's the Defensive Security Handbook, not the Defensive Compliance Handbook. Aren't those two separate things?
There's only one chapter on compliance, though.
Oh, okay, that's good.
And it's just kind of explaining them. It was one of the most difficult ones to write, I think.
I bet. Nobody likes PCI.
Nobody likes compliance. Well, no. There are people that like PCI. Jeff,
that's true.
That's exactly what went through my head.
And Jeff, we
made sure to put a.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
We made sure to put emphasis that in the beginning of that chapter that you shouldn't focus on it, which everybody always says, right?
We're going to write about compliance. By the way, here's first rule.
Don't
go ahead, ignore it. Don't focus on security.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If I may.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
We finally got Jeff in there. It took you a while, Jeff. You all right?
Well, Jeff, you have a question and a sort of visual comment, yes?
I do have sort of a visual comment.
Yes.
But as far, everyone's got the book except for you, Paul. My question is, outside of compliance, PCI or otherwise, what are, in your experience from having talked to people that have bought the book, read the book, using the book, what are the drivers that you're seeing companies have for actually doing security? It's either one of you.
Since I started the question.
I actually think that varies a little bit based on industry vertical and the maturity of the companies. So some companies are in a position of trust, so especially those dealing with finance or something like that. So I think their driver is demonstrating trust to their customers, that the customers can trust them to look after their information, manage assets appropriately and all that sort of thing. Some companies just don't want the brand reputation of a big breach. And I think some of them just honestly feel the pressure that they need to do security, and they don't necessarily have a motivator other than they should be doing something.
Is the content of the book, is that geared towards a particular size organization, or are there elements in the book that provide advice no matter if it's a small business all the way up to a large enterprise?
I think it covers most sizes. I would say it's probably tailored slightly more to smaller organizations, because the target sort of reader is someone who is IT literate but maybe not security literate yet, or is junior in security and looking to take on a big task like bringing a a security practice sort of up and running in an organization. Whereas I think a larger enterprise is more likely to have people that already have the skill set, you would hope.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean they have the organization, because as I've been listening and thinking some of this through, so you had 21 chapters. Are they prioritized? Yep. Should somebody start at the beginning and read their way through? Should they flip through and pick out the pieces that, like, oh, I've got to deal with this? Like, when you, I suspect there's a way people will use it, but when you wrote it, what was the intention for how to use this?
We wrote them that they should all be standalone, so you can read in any order, but we have grouped them in sort of simple foundational stuff first, moving to more advanced technical, and once you've got the foundations nailed later on. So it's roughly in a chronological-ish order as to how you would approach it.
You mentioned you use some open source tools. Which ones are most applicable to larger enterprises, self-serving enough? Because I'm potentially working on a talk on that topic.
Asking for a friend?
Yeah, I'm asking for a friend.
I think prime examples were we talked about Snort when we were talking about IDS. I'll admit a bunch of the commercial solutions are based on it, but we talked about the open source version. I was talking about Nessus, which again, there's the commercial versions, but there was Nessus and sort of generic stuff like Nmap and I forgot the name of it. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say Nessus.
I feel dirty. I feel dirty saying that.
Yeah, just open VAS.
Open VAS. What?
Open VAS.
Yes.
VAS.
Got it. Yes. VAS.
Yeah. But yeah, we mentioned a bunch of those, and I think they may not be what a large enterprise wants necessarily, but they're still applicable. They can still be used.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Amanda, which chapters did you focus on, and did you talk about specific tools in your chapters?
Oh, sometimes I can't remember which ones I wrote.
I know that feeling.
But two of the ones that I'd like to recommend, one is NetDisco, which is a kind of like a asset management for your switching environment. And the other one's Open Audit, just for keeping track of endpoints.
I learned about two tools I've never heard of before.
Does Open Audit, does that run as an endpoint agent?
No. It just uses WMI.
Oh, interesting. Do you find a lot of enterprises are using open source tools?
Half and half, I think. If they have the budget, they usually go and buy something more expensive. But for smaller tasks, I think a lot of the times they use open source or, free alternatives, whatever.
One of the things that I see, and I'm curious if you guys see it too, is a lot of times you pointed out they may or may not have the budget. Sometimes what I see people do too is they're trying to get the budget. So they'll start with something open source, they keep the scope tight, and then they come back and say, wow, look at what we're able to do. By the way, I couldn't do this, this, or this, but this tool will do it. Now you can show somebody some results. Do you tend to find the same things?
I would also argue that very much you do the open source type stuff and you have a wider scope. But look at what we could do. And then management comes and says, well, great, when it breaks, who do we call for support? Well, the internet, of course. So some of those things.
Right. I recommend it a lot. I don't know that I see a lot of people actually doing it in practice. One of the tools that I don't think people use enough, at least in Windows environment, are group policy. There's so much you can do security related with group policy that people just ignore.
Yeah, and so many exposures that nobody configures group policy to not have an Active Directory.
So why do they ignore it? I mean, when we advance stuff like this and we find that people are ignoring it, is it because it's too complicated, because they don't understand it, or because they're just simply unaware of it?
Both.
I think a lot of the times they're just unaware of it.
I also think there's a skills gap in terms of understanding Active Directory well enough to be able to configure it so that it is not inherently insecure.
And I would also add on to that. I think there's also a gap in folks knowing their environment to know how to configure group policy, not to break
point.
something.
That's a good point.
And how many different group policy objects and all that stuff that they should have. I worked in an organization many years ago that said we will be and we will only be a single GPO
oh my God.
organization. Meaning they had one group policy project that process and object that applied to every device in the organization.
Yikes.
Because why?
Sounds horrible.
They had one guy to be able to manage it, and that was across a multi-node DIOs.
I mean, and to Amanda's point too, I think there's a lot of Active Directory administrators that are like, "What's Mimikatz again?" It's like, well, dude, like, come on.
I don't like cats. I can never finish a whole one.
There's issues.
And we cover a little bit of purple teaming in there too. We have a chapter on that kind of goes over using set and Mimikatz and Nmap, that kind of stuff. Just kind of dip their toe in the water for doing offensive internally.
Excellent.
What's in your experience in having seen many organizations, what are some of the advantages of having some commercial tools to solve some of these problems? Like what's the driver, and how do you know when to implement a commercial tool to solve a problem and when to either solve it natively with the environment like Active Directory we're talking about, or implement some open source or free solution?
Who's up this time?
All right, Lee.
Hi.
I don't want him to fall asleep over there.
Amanda has graciously allowed you to go first for this question, which is how, and I'll give you some more time to think about it by repeating it. When I'm faced with the decision, I've got these 21 things. I have to solve essentially 21 problems, probably multiple problems within there. How do I know when to go get a commercial tool versus adopt some open source solution versus use the native architecture or infrastructure, live off the land as attackers do, in order to solve the problem? How do I make those? What advice do you have for people to make those decisions?
I think there's a few areas. One is budget, because that can instantly kill the option of commercial before you even start. So how much, the budget. Someone already mentioned it, but a lot of organizations, I think, just want to have something that they can plug in now, have support, and not need to worry about. And that often means they can get going without having to think about it too much. Open source stuff is great, but there's sometimes a lead time because someone needs to develop it. They might need to extend what's already there, develop some front ends, modify things to work with an environment, that kind of stuff. So I think it's you sort of have a requirement on the skill set of the people in-house to be able to run something, build something, operate something, along with the budget. And then finally, there's the feature set. So there are just some things that you can only get in commercial tools. So if you require something that's only available in the commercial versions of something, or a commercial only something, then it's probably the best way to go.
I want to underscore a point, or I guess amplify the point. It's that capabilities. I think that is so often overlooked because to your point, we'll look at the features or we'll look at the budget. But if you don't have the capabilities to make that work the way you want to, then that's your limiting factor. And either you have to solve for that or let it go and move to what you can do with the skill sets that you currently have available to you. I think it's a really important point. And the reason I bring that up is because we look at a lot lately of, in security, we're good sometimes at coming up with the strategy. Right? If you give me a whiteboard and I have no limitations, I'll tell you exactly how it should be. But that's not the world in which we operate. And if you look into a lot of the leadership research in the literature now, the biggest mistake people make is they've got a really good strategy, maybe even a complex strategy, no way to implement it, and that comes down to capabilities. I think if you can have a pretty honest look at the capabilities that your team have, or the resources you have, whether it's interns or open source support or support contracts or whatever else, I think that might be a really good thing to focus on that's often overlooked.
I think it's important to differentiate between capability and resources, because they relate to each other. In other words, in my assessment of many of the commercial products on the market today, is that while they do, in certain circumstances, provide extra capability, oftentimes I could create or recreate that same capability using open source tools, using what's available to me in the architecture.
And so keep in mind
the time and resources it would take me to do that and maintain it is enormous.
You're on. And just in case I'm not clear, capabilities means exactly that, right? It's the capabilities of the team, the skill sets. So do I have
features from capabilities?
Yeah. But you can look at capabilities overall, and so that's a great point. Can I get this different capability by using this open source tool versus a commercial tool versus some hybrid model? But then also you have to look at, do I know how to operate it? Do I know how to put it into my environment? You know, any tool we use, even a commercial tool, it's going to take time. You've got to learn how to use it. You've got to learn how to act with it. And then, so, you know, that's the risk too when we talk about starting with open source. There's a learning curve. So if you let that go too long, the cost of transitioning to something else gets higher.
Mm-hmm.
But if I may interject,
I think people ignore that question too.
Hold on, Amanda, and then Jeff. Sorry.
I think people ignore that question, or they're not as honest as they should be with that question on their own capability or their team's capability, and that's what happens when they buy a bunch of Blinky boxes that just sit plugged in on a shelf.
It's kind of funny, right? Because we're a pessimistic bunch, but we're really optimistic when it comes to what we can do.
Amanda, then Jeff. Your mic.
I thought I was then.
He's in
Damn it,
studio.
I got my name wrong. I was then.
Rules.
Jeff, you have the floor.
Sorry, Jeff.
He's acting very presidential. Come on now.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Sorry. I'm a little confused with the direction of the last thread here. I get the difference between sort of capabilities and resources, but what are we suggesting if we don't have the capabilities or the resources? Because I think you can make that argument whether it's an open source tool or if it's a commercial tool. But I almost hear like, well, it's better to do nothing than to do something. Is that what we're saying? Or are we saying buy something if you don't have the capability to automate and hope for the best?
Hire an MMS.
Where is this?
Hire an MMS. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the way I was going with that was that if you don't have strong, say, dev and sysadmin capabilities in-house, then the time it takes you to take that effective, what you're thinking is a free open source product to something you can use, could actually end up costing more than just buying an off-the-shelf something, because the amount of time you burn in headcount who are having to develop tools or work with them ineffectively or whatever else. Whereas if you can just go and buy a product that just works, has a support contract, comes with a consultant or whatever, it may actually work out cheaper.
I think that we haven't talked about a very important point, and that is the organization's ability to define goals for their security program that are very much fundamentally based on, well, what am I trying to protect? How much is it worth? Then developing security goals based on that, and then buying Lee and Amanda's book and developing a strategy and making decisions based from there. But
hey, that's the first chapter is building a security program. So you don't even have to start creating it yet.
You use the word goals a lot, I hope.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. So
prioritizing.
Now you can just buy the book. That's good.
I like it. It's the first line item, right? Everybody should have that as the line item in their budget. Let me just answer Jeff's query though too, because I think it's a key point. I'm using it as a sorting function. So capabilities is actually a lens of value. And if you're doing something that's increasing your capabilities, that's a really good choice. So if you're faced with, I can't do everything, then taking on something where you lack capabilities is probably not your best choice. Or you have to go source for those capabilities. So definitely, I'm not it's funny, I would say I'm not a proponent of doing nothing or doing something, except for sometimes doing something will make it a lot worse. So I guess I'm a favor of bias for action, following the guidance of the book. But if you have to choose, I like capabilities as a sorting factor.
Wow, so many buzzwords for this podcast.
It felt good, right? I don't really do buzzwords.
It kind of hurt a little, but it kind of hurt a little bit only the first time.
But then you settle in.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Yeah, I bet you are today. Hurt a little, and then you settled in, and then now you're good.
And I'm not going to move.
I wish it's an inside joke. Sometimes it's a little outside too.
It's a little Welcome to the studio, Michael.
Good Lord.
Wow.
I can't.
I can't even. God. I can't even.
I just lost it a little bit. I lost. I'm back now. Though.
I don't even blush normally, and I'm pretty sure I'm blushing right now.
Oh boy.
You kind of look like that. You blend into the chair.
Yeah, I'm fitting in.
Top and bottom.
It's an inside joke.
Look at your shoes, dude. Look at the shoes. Come on now.
It's an inside joke. That's what they're talking about.
It's a little outside,
in case
too.
you're trying to decipher it, if you can decipher the puzzle, then
Congratulations.
you'll be rewarded with laughter
Pictures.
at Michael's
Pictures.
expense.
You'll be rewarded with pictures.
Oh boy.
That's where we're pretty off the rails. I have an off-topic question.
Go for it now, Kevin.
I've read a lot of O'Reilly books over my time, and I've always wondered: do you get to choose the animal on the cover?
Great question.
That's one of the most popular questions we get. So Lee and I were actually going back and forth for several weeks trying to decide what animal to use, and I think we took a little bit too long. So they just sent us the porcupine, and we're like, all right, I guess.
Was honey badger taken? You couldn't be the honey badger?
Yeah. So their rules are you can't reuse an animal, and it has to be real. Like, can't be a unicorn or anything.
Hold on. What do you mean? Do you mean unicorns aren't real?
I'm telling you, yeah.
Man, this is rough. I can't handle this.
All right, O'Reilly book, cockroach.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, is that
an animal?
Is
That's
it
an insect.
animal or an insect? Can it be an
Yeah,
insect?
that counts.
Yeah, I was gonna say
insect.
they had a
Okay.
wasp in one of them. So
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So that said, you guys got the porcupine, but what were your two top choices? I mean, because obviously I'm assuming there was some difference why you took so long.
Yeah, my top choice, and I can never remember the name of it, but it's the little fish in the Amazon that will swim up your pee stream.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
Wow. To the Google.
I
don't know what
To the Google.
I'm gonna have to open an incognito window for that, I think.
Yeah, Google that. It's the little fish in the Amazon.
Lee, I'm dying to hear your choice now.
I've been pushing for narwhal. In lieu of unicorn, we might as well go for sea unicorns, but no, apparently we can't have that.
I thought the narwhal had been used.
Yeah, that was why I didn't know.
Is it the kangaroo?
Yes, that.
Yeah, is the fish that swims up your pee hole. Wow.
Yep.
This is an adult show. You can say urethra.
And we can keep our
Except for
PG-13
he
rating.
never knew what it was called.
Wow. But I'm actually reading from the Wikipedia article, and it says up your pee hole.
No,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But you should
If
put
it
that
does,
in
it's
there.
because Larry just edited it.
Yes.
Go check the revision history on that one.
It wouldn't be the first time. Wouldn't be the first time.
Are you both ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Is anybody ever really ready?
No. You're never prepared.
I prepped.
Oh, Lee, did you prep for the 5 questions?
Sort of. I thought about it a little bit.
Okay. Well, that's
I have
more than some.
Yeah.
So you know how this works when there's 2 people that have to play 5 questions. I arbitrarily pick one person to start, and then I ask them the first question, and then I ask the same question to the other person, and then that person gets to answer the next question, and then I switch back. It'll flow naturally. It'll flow once we start.
Paul will lead you through the process.
Lee is in the preview window there, so I'll start with Lee to make it easier on our production team switching. You're welcome. Lee, 3 words to describe yourself.
Curmudgeon in training.
Amanda?
Wow.
Impulsive, organized, and energetic.
Amanda, if you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Poison, definitely. I don't like messes.
The kangaroo.
Lee, your weapon of choice if you were a serial killer.
Well, given the shower curtain behind me, I'm going to go with Dexter's kill bag.
Yeah, very nice. Lee, if you wrote a book about yourself, not necessarily security, but a book about yourself, what would the title be?
I can't go with Defensive Security Handbook. That's what I wrote.
You can. You can't use the same
not
animal.
about you.
Amanda.
The book title?
The book title, yes.
Surprise, I don't know what's going to happen next.
Amanda, in the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
I'm a chick, obviously first.
Lee.
Second, because I am not an Ask Grabby Grabby thought leader.
Oh, there he is.
Wow.
Lee, now choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional or otherwise.
I didn't even think of that. Okay.
You didn't prepare for this question.
Alex Trebek from Jeopardy and Susan Sarandon, because I couldn't think of a good reason, but they seemed like an odd pairing.
Amanda?
I saw her in an airport once.
Did you?
Yeah.
She kind of looks
Betty
like me
White.
a little bit.
Betty White.
Did she say Betty White?
She did say Betty White.
Betty White. Excellent choice.
It's funny though.
And Dwayne Johnson.
Wow. Wow.
Interesting pair.
Mind blown.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool pair, and then you say, well, they'd have to create. Okay, yep, we're good.
Yes.
Yeah, no, wow.
Amanda and Lee, thank you so much for appearing on Paul's Security Weekly. You can find the book on Amazon, and I'll read back the exact title: Defensive Security Handbook: Best Practices for Securing Infrastructure. The one by that book.
The one with the porcupine.
The one with the porcupine. And Amanda is a co-host on the Breaking Down Security podcast, so make sure you go listen to that. And Lee, do you have anything that you want to plug? People can follow you on Twitter, or do a blog or podcast, or
same thing for Amanda.
I'm Synax, terrible for speaking on Twitter, or squarelemon.com. That's got my blog. Thank you.
Amanda?
And I'm Info Sister. INFOSYSTIR.
Excellent. Thank you both.
And Amanda's also the one that's running the Hacker Secret Santa this year. Yes?
I am. Oh, I'm so excited about
hold
that.
on. Tell us about Hacker Secret Santa. Well, do we have a minute or so?
So I guess this is the third year I've done it. It's only the second one I can remember.
There was drugs involved in the first one, right?
Right. So it's just something I run where I take anybody's information that wants to give it to me.
Including your credit card, the CVV number on the back.
Right. And I just swap people. And this year we're up to like 140 people over 14 countries.
Wow.
And is there a dollar limit?
25.
25. That's awesome. Is there a website people go to sign up for this, or?
I tweeted out a Google form link.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we use the hashtag #HackerSanta. So if you can look at last year, some of them were really, really inventive. One was like a mini CTF in a Pelican case.
Wow.
Another was like 2 pounds of bacon.
Nice. Nice. I saw a good gift, which was a duffel bag with $500,000 in fake money.
Right.
Yep. And Amanda, I just heard about this new book that I recommended that Paul get for his boys, which was penis pokey.
Oh, you saw that.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Oh, that was one of the Secret Santa.
Well, no, this is like ideas for next year.
No.
This year.
Yeah, Christmas.
The penis pokey book. I mean, that's
it's
brilliant.
like $15. Definitely worth it.
You get $10 for something else too.
That's right. You could get some penis pokey accessories to go with it. Okay. Hey, on that note, Amanda and Lee, thank you again for appearing on tonight's program, and everyone go buy their book. So with that,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. With that, we can take a short break, come back, and we'll do something else. I think it's a technical segment. I don't know. We'll be back with something.
LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logrhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. The SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer security certification training and research. Visit SANS.org to explore their full curriculum and latest training offerings. Netsparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. Netsparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Oh, I have an announcement, I think. itpro.tv/Security Weekly. Use the code SW30. Try it free for 7 days. Receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. Michael, you and I were talking about IT Pro TV earlier on some various shows.
I find we talk about them a lot.
We do.
It's one of those things that I'm excited about. Like it's
all the time. I mean, well, there's always new content. I know that Josh Marpet and Scott Lyons are working on content. Those of you that listen to the show may know them.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about...
And for that, I'm sorry, but I digress.
One of the things that we talked about with Tim on one of the recent startup episodes was they're branching out too, and they're going to include business level content. So how do you make the case for something? How do you get the budget? And I don't know exactly all the stuff that they have in there, but we were taking a look at it. What's always impressed me about it is it's not just for certifications. So what they'll say is, there's a lot of stuff happening in security today. Do you want to stay abreast of it? Okay, we'll bring people in and they'll talk. And what they've started now is they have red team stuff and they have blue team stuff. So a lot like we were just talking with our guests, if you want to kind of get your toes into parts of what's going on or understand enough about it, there's that opportunity. And I think a lot of security teams would be really well served to listen to some of these opinions, because I think too, we've talked to them, high quality content produced on a regular basis. And when you look at somebody who's able to bring you high quality, but within 24 to 36 hours of being able to record it, that's a pretty impressive resource.
Yeah, the platform is pretty impressive. So make sure you check them out. Sven from Netsparker is here with us today to do a technical segment on the content security policies. Sven, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hello. How are you?
I am wonderful. Sven, we always love it when you come on. You are a web app security ninja, and I love it when you shed light on a lot of these kind of not esoteric, but these issues that, I mean, unless you're really deep into web application security, I mean, they kind of fly under the radar. So I'm glad that we're bringing those to light in the show, and the content security policy, I think, kind of falls in that realm.
Yeah, that's true. I think content security policies are a very powerful tool if you apply it correctly. The problem is that it's not that easy, and some pitfalls are not that obvious. So you have to be a little bit careful, but if you apply it correctly, you can do a lot of great things with it.
Sorry, so what is the content security policy?
It's an HTTP security header. I prepared a presentation I can show you if you
That'd be fantastic.
if you want. I will share my screen now.
I'm prepared to have my mind blown, because last time Sven was on, he blew my mind.
Yes, I'm telling you. He's getting good, good at that.
I think it was Larry who did the cat joke today again. And I thought we said that we won't talk about cats anymore on the show, because it's a very emotional topic. I think after this show, we can also add Amazon fish to that list.
Yes, absolutely.
Of topics.
Fish and cats, they kind of go together, though.
They do. They do. And Chinese food.
Okay. So, yeah, I've called the presentation content security policy the last line of your cross-site scripting defense. And before I will talk about the header a little bit more, I will actually talk about why we need that header. So I would say preventing cross-site scripting is hard, and not all the people would agree to that. Some would say it's enough to just encode everything to HTML entities. Now, that isn't working for everything. For example, in anchor text in href, you can still write this and it will be executed. So you have still an XSS vulnerability. Then you could think that you can at least use HTML entities in script blocks. The problem is that the functions who convert to HTML entities often don't put the single quote into consideration. So you have to be careful in doing that. Now, you could also think that you can just use URL encoding for everything. The problem is that browsers won't decode it for you. So if you have %3c, which is the same as the character you see here, the browsers won't decode it. You would just see %3c. So that doesn't work either. And if you think you could just block every single dangerous keyword, then you should watch Security Weekly number 526. It's just not a good idea to do that. So you probably know all of that. You know how to prevent XSS in the different contexts, but mistakes can happen. So you can try to consistently apply your knowledge. You can try to encode every single bit of user-controllable output. You can sanitize your data depending on the context. But the problem is that you must be aware of every single pitfall in your programming language, as I said before. I mean, you must be aware of obscure edge cases, some flash stuff that's not immediately obvious, and all that stuff. And you must never forget to apply your sanitization function. Of course, you also have to think about the required parameters, for example, to encode the single quotes. And if you forget one of those things just once, you end up having an XSS vulnerability. And you might think that shouldn't happen very often with seasoned developers, but the truth is that it even happens to the best. So Google, a company that spends obscene amounts of money on security, receives reports about XSS vulnerabilities on a regular basis. And it's just because you can't catch everything. The same goes for Twitter, for example. Now there's where the content security policy comes into play. CSP is short for Content Security Policy. And the short answer is that it's another HTTP security header. The long answer is that it's an HTTP response header called Content Security Policy. And it has many different directives that define where content is allowed to be loaded from, what kind of content is allowed to be loaded from, what kind of content is allowed to be loaded, and most importantly, in which context scripts can be executed. So there are different kinds of source expressions. I will go into detail about them later, but here are a few of them. For example, if you use none, then nothing is allowed. You can load nothing, and self is just from the same origin. Then a link like this, https example.com, allows only resources from example.com to be loaded. And most importantly, even Firefox supports it. So how may a CSP header look like? And this is an example. So you actually already see that it's a little bit confusing. So we'll go into detail about the different components. The first one is just the name of the header, Content Security Policy, and after that the actually policy follows. For example, default SRC. It's used as a fallback for some missing directives. If you don't specify everything, most of the directives will fall back to default SRC. And none blocks everything by default. So script SRC is very interesting for us because we can use it to actually control where scripts are allowed to be loaded from. And self, again, allows the inclusion of scripts from the same origin, and https example.com allows script inclusions from there. So you actually see already that you can write different source expressions behind that in one line. And yeah, so how does this prevent XSS, you might ask? It does so by whitelisting origins and context. And there are different ways to restrict script execution. You can do it inline with nonces. Those are random strings that you have in your header and in your script tag, and they allow you to only load the inline scripts where the nonce is defined, and an attacker can't know the nonce. It's like similar to CSRF protection from the concept. Then, of course, you can also use hashes. You can generate a hash from your script, from the content of your script log, and only those hashes, only the scripts that hash to the value that you specified are allowed to be loaded. Then there's unsafe inline, and there we have one of the first mistakes you can happen. Unsafe inline will be. I will talk about that a little bit later too.
So Sven, I'm sorry. So this is really only for reflective cross-site scripting, right? Where I'm the attacker and the source would be my client trying to execute a script. But if I'm able to manipulate the application and put code inside of it that gets executed within the application, that source, potentially the nonce and the hashes would match as well, correct?
Well, the hash, that depends, I think. For example, the hash wouldn't match if you change anything in the script log.
Oh,
that's
okay.
kind of the point of that.
Yep.
And even stored XSS can be prevented with CSP. Mm-hmm. So you can also restrict where external scripts are allowed to be loaded from. For example, with self, HTTPS, and data. And you see the red ones are like unsafe keywords that you shouldn't really use. So you can also use HTTPS example.com. We had that before. And you can also use this wildcard character for subdomains. So any subdomain of example.com would be allowed to be included, every script in there. So what can go wrong?
Nothing.
They're common.
Oh, wait. Never mind. Sven's on talking about it, so clearly lots of things can go wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So a common mistake is unsafe keywords. And depending on the context, there are words that should be avoided. For example, unsafe eval, unsafe inline HTTPS and data. They are quite deadly for every CSP policy most of the time, because they defeat the whole purpose of CSP in most cases. For example, script SRC self unsafe inline. And you can bypass that just with script alert warn script. Mm-hmm. Because it just kind of disables the rest of the policy. And then you have script SRC self data. Then you can bypass it like this. Okay, so it's not really about very clever bypasses. It's just about what you allow the attacker to do, basically, where content is allowed to be loaded from. What can go wrong? Number 2, relying on default SRC. It's a good way to avoid mistakes, but not every directive will be caught by default SRC if you omit it. For example, if you have default SRC self, you can still inject like this, a form that sends your password somewhere else.
That requires a lot of code though, and typically you're restricted as to the amount of data that you can inject, correct?
Yeah, that is kind of true. I mean, it depends on where the injection is and if there's even a length limit. Like you would probably do this with most GET-based XSS. Mm-hmm. So it's not that big of a problem, but it's very obvious in the URL. And of course, we have common mistake number 3, wrong use of nonces. And you, like with everything cryptography related, you can do a lot of stuff just plainly wrong. And first of all, the nonce must be a random string. It must not be reused, and it should be sufficiently long. So I have an example about bad nonces. For example, request 1 and request 2 are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Then a very, very short
one.
nonce. And this one looks very good at the first look. It's long enough, actually. 128 bits. But the problem is that it's just the MD5 of 235. So it's kind of like pointless to use it. And often the best security features are the hardest to get right. And I just shed a little tear right now when I think of HPKP, because I really liked it and now it's gone. It's a shame. But anyway, let's continue. Some other common mistakes are the syntax. If you miss single quotes, it means some directives won't work. And this can be a problem in certain circumstances. Meta tags, and some directives are not allowed to be set in them, and that is a problem as well if you rely on meta tags. For example, I think you can't set a report URI with them. Then you're going to have a bad time, because no CSP report will ever arrive, because it just doesn't work. And you can also use unsupported algorithms. Only SHA-256, 384, and 512 are allowed to be used in hashes. And I will show you a demo of some of these, of how CSP works, basically. I've prepared a little test page for this. You can see here I hope it's big enough.
Yes.
Okay. You can see here different directives, default SSC, script SSC, and so on. And if I type it here, it will be applied to this test page over here. Right. So we also have a hash generator to show how to use the hash, and we can also add additional content to the to the page. And we can also see CSP reports. So what I first want to do is set the default SSC to none to show you how that might look like. Okay, so it's pretty ugly. Like nothing is allowed to be loaded. You don't have any scripts or anything. No images. Just nothing is allowed to be loaded. It's pretty ugly, and therefore it's very secure. Mm-hmm. But I think nobody would visit your website anymore. So what's way better is to set the default SSC to self. So everything works again. But now, if I would try to, this is just a reflected exercise. If I would try to inject my own script, it would be refused. It doesn't work. It just that's only allowed to load scripts from the same domain.
Right, but that's going to break things like if you've got any kind of Google Ads or Google Analytics, which are very popular to have on your site, that would break that, essentially.
Exactly. I don't know if they are CSP. Like if you can use them with CSP, I guess you can. You would see a lot of Google URLs in the CSP directives on the popular website.
Right.
So just to show you what you could do is script SSC script.js script add content, and I hope it worked. Let me check. Oh yeah. So I don't know if you see it, but it says local script. So local script executed. It's on the same domain. Now, but that is probably not really the reality of most sites. In most sites, you have just really ugly script blocks with a lot of stuff in there. So let's do this again. Local script, add content, and now you see where the problem is, because a lot of sites just have these inline script blocks. And you can't have both. You can't block the attacker script block and and your own script logs at this, and don't log your own script logs, it just the browser can't can't distinguish between the two. So what you actually can do then is as a C-self, and then use your nonce, and then it's just a random value. And what you would do here is type in nonce, and then just the same nonce value as before, right? So if we try it this time, it just works because we have the same random value.
Mm-hmm.
It's here, this one, and yeah, this works, but the attacker script is still blocked. So let's just check an unsafe, or just no security policy at all. If we would scan it with Netsparker, we would see that it just warns you that there's not a content security policy implemented, which is obviously bad. Now, as I said before, you have probably these script blocks here, and you can have a very, very good content security policy. Like here, use self, script as a C-self, and then just only allow, for example, https example.com, and maybe all the subdomains as well. And there you have a problem, okay? You can still not, you can still not execute your inline script, and a lot of developers will just they will just not. They will go crazy, basically. So they see this stuff works, all the external scripts work, but the local scripts don't. And what they will just do is they do this unsafe inline, and they say, oh, well, it works great. Now my script works, everything is fine, but also the attacker scripts work too. So you have all your great directives and did everything correctly, but then you have an unsafe inline and ruin the whole thing. So if we would quickly scan this again.
Ain't nothing safe about unsafe inline.
Yeah.
It's a great t-shirt, Larry.
So Netsparker would also tell you that you're doing something wrong. For example, the unsafe content security directive, content security policy directive. So it's very handy. You can do a lot wrong, and it's just a great way to check it. Great. Now now to see what you can also do except of nonces, because they're sometimes bypassable. They were bypassable in the past by using SVG and animations and stuff. It's a little bit complicated, but it was a very cool trick. I won't show this today because it doesn't work with modern browsers anymore. Mm-hmm. But I can quickly show you how such a hash works. So we have this here alert local script. I don't know if I did that already. And then you just generate the hash here. Okay. And what you do again here is using self here, self here, and this time SHA-256, I think, was it? And yeah, so it works again. So it's pretty handy to prevent all of that, all of the attacker control stuff. But I think you want to see some cool bypasses again. So I just show you one very common one that can be abused. If you have that on, if you have something like this on your local domain, or any whitelisted domain actually, if you have something like this, it looks very innocent at first. So it's just some JSON. But what you can actually do is using a callback parameter, and then you see it's just actually JSONP or JSON with padding. Now, what this would do is, if you define your function ASD and then include this here, this object would actually be passed to ASD, to the function, and you could do anything what you want cross-domain. But what you can also do, since this is some whitelisted script actually on the same origin, or on a bypass on a whitelisted origin, is you can write your payload like this. Then you go there. Let's just make this here self. And this doesn't work anymore. But if you were an attacker and would then include script SRC, and then this JSONP endpoint, you can actually bypass that. So you should be really careful about those JSONP endpoints. You should really take a look at the whitelisted domains that you have, and that they don't contain such unsafe endpoints. Now, what I can also quickly show you is CSP reports. They are quite useful actually. If you type here report.php and then have this here, you will actually receive a CSP report that looks like this. So you can see everything, what happened and which line it happened, and why it was blocked. So it's very handy to actually confirm that your script directive is working correctly, and you can also very early detect people that try to abuse an existing XSS vulnerability that just doesn't work due to CSP.
Oh, so Sven, how did you get that CSV report?
Okay, that's actually one of the directives here. It's the report URI directive, and you can just just type in report PHP. It will just this page you will fetch the.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you dump that report to a page in the directive for the CSV policy.
Yeah, that's just some JSON that I stored and then retrieved on this page again.
Gotcha.
But you can store it actually in a database and write yourself some code that notifies you if a CSP report is sent, and therefore if...
Right, and you only make it available on the back end and not in the front end application, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's awesome.
Okay, that's about it, I think. Do you have any questions?
Questions, folks?
Negative
Questions from the audience?
But my mind is blown continuously by Sven.
That's right. Everyone that does web app pen test, take note.
Yeah. The last time Sven was on, we were watching. I was literally texting to our guys like, "Why aren't you watching this?"
Yes, you should be watching this.
Yes, and I would also argue the same for this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Sven, thank you so much. Sven works at Netsparker. You should definitely check them out for your web app scanning needs, for sure. And we love it when Sven comes on and drops knowledge with us, as he's done consistently, and this is no exception. So, Sven, thank you again.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll take a short break, come back, talk about the security news for this week. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Cryptography is all about secret keys that need high-quality entropy to be truly random. NetRandom from Whitewood Security delivers pure quantum entropy on demand across the entire data center and out to the cloud. Think NTP, but for quantum entropy. Inoculate your applications from making weak crypto keys, all without having to change a line of code. Visit getnetrandom.com to learn how you can take control of your entropy supply and ensure crypto security today. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, protecting applications, connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/PSW. Onapsis is the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business-critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I wanted to tell everyone about a webcast that we're doing with Onapsis November 16th from 3 to 4 p.m. Seba, who is their lead research person for Onapsis. Get this. Onapsis found, I want to say the number is like around 20. In just October alone, Seba and his team found 20 vulnerabilities that span across both SAP and Oracle. I call it business-critical applications.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds like a boring title, like securing business-critical applications, but really the whole gist of this is Seba's going to be in studio, and I'm going to ask him a lot of questions like, so, dude, like, your research team was really busy. Like, get into the details and some of the flaws, and then talk about, like, so you're finding these major flaws. What's that like? How are you reporting them? So do some of the higher level aspects, but also dig in with him and say, what are the impacts? How is it executed? Why aren't some of these things fixed? He found some SQL, or his team and himself found some SQL injection vulnerabilities. And I'm like, I feel like we don't see a lot of those SQL injection vulnerabilities anymore. Or at least not as many. I think the same thing with cross-site scripting. They kind of fall in that class where people are starting to figure some of that stuff out.
Starting to.
But here we have these really mission-critical applications, e-business suite, and there's that's the one from Oracle, right? And there's these like heinous SQL injection vulnerabilities, and I'm like, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. SecurityWeekly.com/Onapsis. Please go register for that. It's going to be an awesome conversation. Whether you're looking into the security of SAP and Oracle applications, or you're like, hey, we have those, and I'm a security person, and like I've never really been able to. Yeah, no one like really lets me in on this. Is kind of where I see a lot of people fitting. Like, no one lets us test those because they're business critical. And so Onapsis has all the good stuff. They got a great product for doing that.
Yeah, and what that also means is that if you watch that webinar, you're going to get an understanding of conversations you can go have, right? A lot of times security feels like it's always reactive. And so webcasts like this, content like that, you can listen and you say, whoa, that is business critical. I have to deal with that. Now you've got some insights. I think the trick, of course, is going to be, how do you go explain that to somebody else?
Yeah, explain the impact.
Yeah, but by being able to look at that and being able to look at the fact that it's business critical, you then get that opportunity. I think, too, a lot of times people need to listen with that intent to say, I should regress this against the list that I've got. Oh, I found a couple on here. I need to go have conversations, and that's your opportunity for those conversations, not to be, so I'm here from security again, and I've got bad news for you. It's to say, hey, this is critical, right? I just got some insight. Let's make sure we're working together to keep you protected. You do that. That's a pretty compelling shift.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And now we're going to talk about the security news. I really want to start with this Microsoft DDE
I want you to tell me more about this because I didn't see this one at all this week.
As pen tester Larry, you should be all you got to be all over this, because the frustrating part is, well, I guess let me back up before I call out Microsoft for being silly. I'll use a nice word. It isn't silly, but it's completely ridiculous why they're not deeming this the way it should be deemed. So basically, have you ever, I used to use applications for Office that were installed locally on your machine. I think a lot of it shifted to the cloud, but if you've got a spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel, right, and you worked really hard to get that in there, maybe you created a chart or something, and then you had to write a report that put some text around, like I got to explain these graphs and stuff that I put in Excel. So you're writing this Word document, and you're like, well, I really want to put the Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, I want to link it, put the Excel spreadsheet inside of my Word document. And by the way, I'm still kind of modifying my Excel spreadsheet, so, and then I don't want to have to go re-embed it. Like, it just automatically happens. Like, that Excel data just magically, for the end users and for those of us that haven't looked into the DDE protocol or object linking embedding, what we're talking about, right? It just happens magically. But really, what that is a DDE with a dynamic data exchange.
Yep.
It allows applications like that to share data. So you can bring data from Excel into Word, and it magically happens. Now, notice when you've done that, it doesn't ask you, hey, do you want to let Excel send me data? No. Like, it just happens. It happens. It's easy for the end user. And what the researchers at SensePost figured out was that essentially the DDE component in Word could reach out and basically execute commands and run other information, execute things like PowerShell in the background.
And this isn't new.
No, I don't think that. I mean, this is a fundamental. So what Microsoft has said, speaking of is it new, Microsoft says basically this is a feature. It's not a security vulnerability.
Yep.
Like, this is the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have other applications applications are supposed to be able to share.
20 years ago, if you went to Microsoft with something like this, the standard comment was, that's not a bug, that's a feature.
It's a feature.
You'd say, but I don't see it anywhere. It's an undocumented feature.
It's a vulnerability.
Well, so here's the question, and you and I talked about this a bit yesterday. I think you set up the use case really well. I'm working on a spreadsheet. I need to keep one copy of it, so I'm just going to link that information to my document. I've been in the business world for 20 years. I've never seen this. I mean, I've seen it, but it's not what I see as a common practice. So I think the question I have then is it a feature that people still want? Is it a feature people are relying on?
Well, that's the question that I believe enterprises are asking today. Having spoken with some of those enterprises, their concern is they don't know who's using it. Right. They don't know how they're using it. They don't know how often it's being used and how critical the function is that it's supporting.
I love those questions.
So, like, when you don't know the answer to any of those questions,
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you're like, well, shit, if I turn it off,
people might come screaming.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like removing a module from the NPM library and shit breaks.
Yeah. It's different from the Oracle and SAP question because you know that, well, that's very critical.
Those are business critical. We're already using those, so we've got to take care of it.
We know that.
This is a feature. It's an undocumented feature.
We don't know.
But, I mean, we don't really know how it works. And so then if you say to somebody who's using it, how well does that work? And then, you know, and the thing I'm thinking about now is the amount of collaboration that we have. Even, I mean, I think Google pushed a lot of people towards everybody can edit the document at once. And now, I mean, you can do that across if you have Office 365 or anything else. So I'm going to be curious then how much longer the DDE is even
necessary.
Needed because you have other ways to be able to handle it.
Well, the DDE also happens, I believe, in the cloud. Well, it does. No, it does because there are things that are dynamically updated and included in G Suite documents across multiple spreadsheets, presentations, forms, the whole thing.
So I'd also mention O365 does similar type things.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying Google started it, but Office 365 now absolutely has it. It's not necessarily as clean, but that's that. I mean, I guess that's and then I think what's kind of interesting when I look at it, because I do look at it a lot of times from a business lens, is to say, okay, so do I need it? Yes or no? Because I actually kind of get that's a feature. Is it being used the way we want it to? No. It's always worked this way. I mean, back in my days of teaching this SSP, we talked about all of these exact types of. This isn't new. Like this concept, the concept isn't new, right? This is something that we've looked at. Then I look at it and I go, okay, I mean, we've had this conversation on this program about protocols and things that were developed 20, 30, 40 years ago. And knowing what we know today, would we develop them the same way? Well, no. Okay, cool. Well, let's go change it. Okay, well, last time I checked, we haven't, because we're so reliant on these things. So I think what's interesting, Paul, is as you pointed out. So do we know how often people are using it? Do we know if they're dependent on it or not? Do we have an alternative to it? I can't answer any of those questions.
And I think even some of that is that whether or not anybody's using it, whether or not we rely on it, it's enabled by default. Am I correct?
Okay, that's an interesting point.
And I'm guessing. I don't know.
And it's something that the user is using. They really don't know they have this functionality. So my concern is, even if I go get there's Yara rules out there that can enable logging. There's ways to log essentially when this event occurs, whether it's malware or not. You can log when this event occurs. Even if I'm an analyst looking at those logs, like I don't know if I turn this off, that's going to impact someone. And how's it going to impact that person? If I go turn it off, even with some awareness that we're going to do this, well, I mean, and really the real issue here is you shouldn't allow users to click on malicious documents, and you should stop email phishing. And then if you do that, I mean, you really don't have this problem then, because the malicious documents never get inside your environment, right? And then, well, if they do, you've got an EDR or some kind of endpoint product that when it does execute something, it detects it 100% of the time.
Right? So we should go back to paper and pencil is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, make it simple.
Much, yeah. I think that's what I'm saying. Wow.
Agreed. To talk about.
I just a quick poll. Yeah. How many people think that Microsoft will issue a patch for this? And if they do, how long do you think before it's issued?
I don't think they'll issue a patch. I think they'll just offer the advice on how to disable.
Yeah, it might become something in a policy configuration or something down the road.
Kevin?
Someone sent me a text message that our YouTube stream is broken, just in case you're wondering. Okay, it's back up.
That's what she said.
Whoever texted me. I didn't recognize the number, but someone Google hacked my cell phone. Someone hacked their way in the show. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you think?
Did that.
I agree with you all. I feel like there's going to be some esoteric configuration option that the people impacted by this are probably not going to understand when they're setting up Word or Excel for the first time.
I think I want to
put the unfortunate reality.
I want to put a call out to all Microsoft customers, especially large ones, to push Microsoft to issue some kind of better fix for this vulnerability. Because if enough customers, Microsoft will release a patch when enough customers complain.
Customer requirement, customer demand. But you know what? I at least like say give us a solution. I think giving us a patch is too narrow. Show us. I mean, if it's a configuration, that's fine. And Kevin, to your point, make it a little bit more easy for us to understand.
Right.
And then again, you know, I'd be curious too, and I'd be curious if Microsoft has usage insights onto it, because then if you could turn some of this off by default, that'd be great. But what's kind of rolling in the back of my head is maybe this is used more ways than we know right now.
Larry, you wanted to go somewhere.
The story that I wanted to talk about was the don't hack back story. Because I thought this was really kind of, like, very. Mine was from Vice.
Yep, mine too.
So it was very. The title was very much doom and gloom, in that Keith Alexander said, "Hey, you know, we're relaxing the rules a little bit that may give you the ability to hack back." And do so okay, but don't do that, because you could start a war that way.
I thought it was very interesting in the article that General Keith Alexander, former director of the NSA, said, we can give Sony six... Talking about this in context, they're talking about what if Sony were to hack back against North Korea. And his response is, essentially, we can give Sony 6 guys from my old place there, assuming NSA, and they'd beat up North Korea like red-headed stepchild, no pun intended. I thought that was a pretty profound statement. I wanted to get everyone's thoughts on that. That was just one of my takeaways from the article.
I would tend to agree that may in fact be possible. That said, think about what potentially North Korea's cyber capability may actually be. And it's probably a hell of a lot better than many folks realize.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a bigger question. Do we generally dislike the concept of hack back? Or do we dislike the concept of somebody from a government perspective saying, you shouldn't hack back, only we should hack back? Like, is it that we...
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said.
No, I know. If we hack back,
if we, the government, hacks back and create a war, that's okay. That's ours. But if Paul has this thing on his website because at securityweekly.com and it hacks someone back and they happen to be in North Korea and that starts a war, that's bad.
That's bad. It's also a violation of the CFAA.
On whose part?
When I do it.
Yeah.
It's because someone attacks me, that could potentially violate the CFAA. If I hack them back, then I could be in violation of the CFAA. But when the government does it in the protection of the country, in hopefully in collaboration, with some oversight. Okay, maybe I'm stretching it a little bit.
You're optimistic. I like that.
Very optimistic.
No, but my question is though, at least from our perspective, are we okay with the concept of hacking back, or we're not okay with it? Right? Because there's two parts. There's the no, hacking back's okay, Michael, and there's the hacking back's not okay. And gosh, when the government tells us not to do it because only they could do it, right? Like it's a
that's weird. I agree.
But it's also I'm not really a fan of it. I haven't seen a case where I think it's a good strategy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the trust in the government or don't really go together.
I'm going to separate out. I don't even mean from a government perspective. I mean, this is stuff we've talked about for 20 years. And I can, in 15 or 20 years ago, it was, are your forensics capabilities good enough to have certainty that that's exactly what happened, that you're going to go take action on somebody else? And are you good enough to be able to do that? And what other hell is going to rain down on you when you do that? Take for just a second the legality out of it. Don't worry about that for a second. And just go, from a practicality perspective, does this even make sense?
Attribution is hard.
But it really comes down to the quality of your intelligence. And I think probably some of what General Alexander is saying is that our government agencies
have much better intelligence.
Correct. To make much more intelligent decisions about what operations should be conducted against what countries based on intelligence. You might observe, or I might observe, any of us observes an attack against us, assumes that we know who to hit back.
Right. Mid-level enterprise observes an attack coming from Afghanistan. They go attack, and not really from Afghanistan.
Right.
Exactly.
That just happens to be the endpoint, three layers deep.
Exactly.
From somewhere.
But also, I think that in defending the country, you have to. A lot of people have to make careful decisions about the severity of the attack and how the operation is conducted. In other words, in the physical sense, do I deploy special forces, or do I declare all-out war, or do I do something in between there, or on either extreme of that?
And that's the difference. So to clarify from my perspective, I think in the commercial sector or in the civilian sector, I haven't seen a case where hacking back makes sense at all. I don't even care what you did before joining it. Like, that doesn't make sense. But if you're suggesting, the government acting with cyber capabilities now, they've stood up all the new capabilities. Every branch has something. That's great. That's part of the workforce. I'm okay with that.
Right.
If you're doing that in a military or a government context, that's fine. Or it's not fine. But to me, separate issue. When I see hack back, and then they use Sony as an example, I don't see any situation where I think a private sector company should do anything other than defend itself successfully and focus on one of the other 2,000 things you got to do.
Gotti Evron came on the previous episode and talked about hacking back in a much more different context. And really, what we go back and listen to that if you're listening to this now and want to know more. And basically what Gotti's saying is, and what we all agreed upon was that it's the back piece that's bad. When I start to, or an organization starts to launch attacks back, that's bad. However, if someone has infiltrated computers within my own network, I own those computers and all of that property, I pretty much have free reign to do what I want on my own stuff.
I'm good with that.
Right? And that was really, and so what Gotti was advocating for is to qualify that term hacking back, in that I can take actions against an attacker. However, I have to live within the confines of the law.
Keep it in the bounds.
Right, and keep it in the bounds.
Oh, we drop a file that's got Social Security numbers on it, and they pull that down, and it contains some DDD exploits that wipes their system or something.
Well, no, you can wipe your own systems. You can't go wipe the attacker's system.
But I didn't wipe their systems. They pulled a file that was on my system. Is that a hack back?
That's a gray area.
That's a bad.
Exactly.
It's because it's their property, not yours.
Well, no. My property gets hacked. I plant a file on my asset that gets hacked that is, in fact, something that no one should be touching. Like, because it has some vulnerability exploit, evil attacker grabs, oh my God, I got Social Security numbers, and they pull it.
I go back to the mining shack in the hills of South Dakota where I put all my mining stuff in it, and in the off season, and if someone opens the door, there's a shotgun that blows them away. Yeah. Like that's setting
that's
a lethal
bad.
Setting a lethal trap is how I put that.
Yep. Okay. And that's why I'm throwing that out there, because I want the discussion.
Yeah. Yep. I would say no.
You asking for a friend there?
No.
All right. What else do we got? We got other stuff to talk about too.
Of course.
So some people are testifying in front of Congress, including Marissa Mayer and the who's the Equifax CEO, Smith.
In Senate, not Congress.
Senate. Thank you. It's a Senate committee hearing, essentially, right? As we've seen. And who is it? The Richard Smith also. And they're going to get grilled by Congress. I don't know. That made the news. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is just somebody saying, look at us. We took it seriously, and we brought those CEOs in, and we demanded they do something, and look at me, vote for me. I care about cybers and the kids, and it's this is a complete waste of time. Nothing will come from this.
I agree.
Except lots of words.
Lots of words, lots of wasted time and effort, lots of whatever, and it's there's no value.
It might be kind of entertaining to watch.
I don't think with Marissa Mayer it's going to be entertaining.
No.
Based on what we've learned about how it was or wasn't handled and how she has or hasn't done things, no. We didn't. I wasn't on any of the programs where we discussed it. I think the way, and to be fair, I've only kind of read the reports of. I didn't watch the testimony, but I think the way that the Equifax CEO handled it was interesting. I know a lot of people got upset because he didn't name names, but he assigned pretty discreet blame at different points, and people didn't think that was leadership. At the same time, if he just got up there and said, well, I mean, you know, that happens. It was sophisticated and unprecedented, and, you know, like he came in, he had dates. Like somebody had at least prepared him to come in with a specific set of facts, and
you don't
we
think
may or may not have liked that, but
someone in the Senate committee is going to ask ridiculous questions that are going to be hilarious. Come on now.
Okay, you know what? I wasn't thinking of it that way.
That's what I'm thinking.
Like, I mean, Guam is an island that could tip over?
They could be ridiculous educated questions, right? And they could be ridiculous uneducated questions, which have a tendency to be way more entertaining.
Yeah. I'm in a serious mood. Like, for me right now, that would be like, somebody else is going to watch that, not realize the hilarity of it.
Yeah, but we will. That's what I'm saying.
No, but then you're going to have others now thinking those are the questions that they should ask.
That's true.
And it just gets more complicated for us. Now,
all right. Anyway, next.
I don't like it.
You stole my thing.
I'm sorry. You got to be a fucking downer, man.
Let's talk about Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
Did you
admit it? No,
or not?
Admittedly, so I think there are a lot of people in our industry that don't watch it anymore because they think it's boring.
Yeah, that's why I stopped watching. I'll admit, I stopped watching it when they had pretty much. It was almost like an entire season where they really didn't talk much about hacking. Does anyone remember that?
But you know what? I think it's been a season or so. I'm a season behind or so because I do that and we binge watch. But you know what? For me, that's okay. Because I still think it's quite entertaining, regardless of whether the fact it's about hacking or not, or is a geopolitical thing, or it's because the story is well written. There's lots of television that would argue that I watch on TV that is probably a lot of folks consider crap, but I enjoy the entertainment.
Yeah.
So that's why I still watch it, because I think it's entertaining.
Do you watch The Orville?
No.
I find that much better than Mr. Robot right now. In fact, especially if you're a Star Trek fan. So in Mr. Robot, the Elliot character does the name drop of Dave Kennedy, pretends to be Dave Kennedy in a social engineering. Dave was so excited about this. Dude. Did you see how excited he was? So excited.
I mean, I could smell it from here.
Love Dave. I could smell Dave's excitement from a mile away. Also, Moxie Marlinspike was mentioned in the episode. So
really, I haven't watched the episode, and I only watched that one scene just because I wanted to say what Dave's excitement was about. Yeah, he sits down in the meeting and like totally social engineers them. And who are you? Oh, I'm Dave Kennedy. I work with Greg. We were responsible for the Q4 push.
Yeah, and they said something about having long hair.
I had longer hair back then. Just like Santa.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Like, yeah.
It's been a long time.
But yeah, still pretty damn cool. Good. And of course, I loved some of the Facebook posts that Chris Nickerson said, dude, like, TV is not a badge of honor. And then Dave responds back with, dude, I still watch your show all the time. In fact, I ask other people to watch your show all the time. It's like, touche. Touche. Tiger team for the win.
Tiger team for the win. Oh, boy.
Well, look, I just skimmed this hacking the fingerprint biometric one. So is it hacking? So, Paul, you're right there, and let's say you're using a fingerprint biometric, and you fall asleep, and I take your thumb and press it on the phone. That's hacking now? That feels like a misleading headline to me.
Gummy bears. I mean, what? No.
Well, no, gummy bears to me would be hacking it.
Yeah.
This is simple. Man fell asleep, woman took his thumb, put it on the phone, unlocked it, discovered he was cheating on her. And then lost her mind and forced the plane to land. Like, that doesn't feel like hacking to me.
That sounds like password reuse to me.
Well,
no, I think it's simple. I mean,
it's hacking if you're using something as it's not intended to be used. His thumb was intended to be the. He was the.
But it wasn't
he just happened to be asleep.
It wasn't intended to be used by someone else.
So this shows you the distinction between authentication and identification.
It was sneaky.
It was sneaky. Yeah, I didn't like the headline. That's all.
Would this be considered unauthorized access?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
That's exactly right. Right. So it's identification, authentication, authorization. It was authenticated. We presume foolishly that biometrics also include identification, and clearly they don't. And yeah, completely unauthorized.
And now my question would be, prove it.
Yeah. Great.
Prove it.
Great point.
Prove that it was unauthorized.
That's true.
Yeah. Where's the audit trail that said that he didn't authorize it?
I think
he did.
This is as much hacking as the story I'm about to tell.
Yes, please do.
I won't say where this came from, but someone told me about husband and wife, and the husband was cheating on the wife, and the wife found out because the husband was texting, what he thought was texting, back and forth with the mistress. However, didn't realize how Apple iMessages worked.
Showed up on the iPad, right?
All of the messages were showing up on the iPad. Yes. Yes. That's, I think, similar hacking.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're going to call that hacking, then, wow, gosh, we've got a lot of stuff that we would call hacking. I get nervous with those things.
Dude, can you
I'm
hack
a professional hacker then at that point. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Right. I've been hacking since I was 3.
Did you guys read what happened with a Twilio?
Oh, what now?
App developers who code using a Twilio cloud-based platform are forgetful about removing their hard-coded credentials and basically allowed everyone to eavesdrop. I don't use Twilio. Twilio? Twilio. Which is Twilio?
Twilio?
What is
Twilio? I think it's Twilio. Twilio?
I've heard of
I thought it was Twilio, too.
Is the eavesdropper vulnerability exposes mobile call text data? Is that the one?
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm thinking of Trello.
No, it's Twilio.
Twilio.
Twilio is a cloud communications platform built for SMS voice and messaging applications and an API built for global scale.
Forgetful about removing their hard-coded credentials. This is not a new problem.
No.
This is also not a vulnerability.
No.
Correct.
This is well, no, it's a vulnerability, and there's a patch for it. There's a patch for human stupidity.
Oh, stop, Larry.
All right, there's a patch for human ignorance.
Well, let's go simpler, right?
Yeah.
Can you share this patch with us?
This is a QA. One-time application.
Yes.
That's a denial of service attack, not a patch.
This is a testing breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've talked to a number of folks that tell me that there's a point in the process where this makes things go better. Great. And they always promise we'll remove them. So we say they're forgetful about it. They're not forgetful about it. It means there was no process in place. There's no discipline following it. There was no QA check. This wasn't something that they tested for.
How do you build in QA checks for credentials into your system? How do you know what credentials look like? How do you know?
I'm not enough of a developer, but I can tell you about enough projects where I can tell you how many hard-coded passwords we have.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a way to do it. I'm not smart enough. But everybody knows that. If you're watching, you know I'm not here because I'm smart. I don't even know
because you're good looking.
Is it good looking? So should I slide over a little bit? I was gonna say, I've got a face built for radio, man.
But I think it's more of a... See, I've got a face for radio and a voice for text.
But I think it's more of an awareness and training issue at the core of it, right? As the developer, I know in my applications, because I have the security mindset, like I know that these passwords and these secrets, if they're misused, or I know if I'm misusing them, I know that that's bad, and I'm developing a plan to fix that. If there are developers that don't have the security mindset, they may put a secret key inside of a text file, and then it's very, very easy for that to end up in your software version control, or very easy for that to end up in a place where someone could read.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think it's we could call it a poor coding practice, or certainly not what we'd call a good coding practice.
Well, it's not even code. It's not even code.
But it's a practice.
It's architecture.
Of coding.
Yeah, it's architecture.
Okay, I completely agree with that. But then
I can have the most secure code in the world, but if I'm calling an API and I'm storing those keys and they're like there.
The thing that I find when I go look at this is, and I'm looking at Twilio's response and I go, hold on, we tell people not to do this. Yeah, no, so here's what's probably happening, and I have no inside knowledge of it in this particular situation, but here's what typically happens. Don't do this. By the way, your deadline is in 3 days. Well, I don't have what. Okay, well, do what you got to do. Just take it out when you're done. And that's, so it's this whole, they forgot. When we told them not to, but they're still doing it because they don't listen. But hey, we made our quarterly deadline. So it's a combination of architecture and practices, but it's that pressure. So we blame it on.
Is Jeff still on?
We blame it on developers.
Jeff, you there?
But I don't think we need to.
Oh, okay. This is a crypto problem, right? I mean, because basically your keys are just hanging out there for everyone
blockchain
to read.
Is the answer.
Yeah, but you don't know. It's not even blockchain.
Right, isn't that the new PKI?
No, but you
don't get me started on blockchain right now. Don't get me started.
I think this is one of the emerging kind of thing in our field that we're going to see more and more as we get more agile with development. Excuse the pun. That we don't, developers and security people alike don't realize the need and how bad the problem is of protecting these secrets and keys, and how that is now scaling out. And there are companies that are providing solutions. However, we as security people and developers, largely, in my assessment, aren't going, hey, I have this problem where I'm trying to protect all of my keys, and I just can't. Because,
well, you got
like
99
you said,
problems. Where's this fit?
Right. That's the problem.
Yep.
Is you have 99 of them.
Right, and then I use
a key is definitely one of them.
And then I use head knock, and now I've got 100 problems. Yep. And
it's a problem that I have with our own app, which is one of the reasons why I like developing our own app, because I can get in tune with these problems, and I'm like, wow. And the interesting part is when we talk to vendors that Michael and I and many of us do all the time, we come across ones and I'm like, yes, I have that problem. Like, why don't more people realize that they have the problem and go seek out these vendors and solutions? And some of them have a really elegant solution.
I have a little bit of an answer to that. Maybe not so much in the development side, but I'll tell you, there's a bunch of folks doing that privileged identity management or the privileged access management space. And when you listen to them start to talk about it, right? And you did the webcast earlier today with Jonathan Sander. There's times Jonathan and I have sat and talked about this, and I'm like, and he's like, no, you got to think about it this way. Solid stuff, and you're like, wow. You follow up and you go, well, how come more people aren't doing that? He's like, well, and I don't mean to put words in Jonathan's mouth, but when you start looking at it, well, who has the keys right now? Okay, and so you're going to say, hey, by the way, I have the keys, and you totally shouldn't trust me, so I want to go put this other infrastructure in place? No. Because you say, well, I've got 99 problems, and I'm pretty trustworthy. And Paul, I like you. You're trustworthy. And Larry, I don't actually trust you. So Paul, you can have the keys, and we're good to go. And so what happens is it's why don't we have more of it? Because the people who are aware of it say that's a problem, but I've got all these other problems, and you know what? We're a team. This isn't going to be a problem for us. Those other people, totally a problem for them. They should be all over that. But us, no, I think we're good. And I think that's what happens. We
did an interview with someone on this problem. Do you remember?
Maybe.
Who was the person's name? The woman from Conjure.
Oh, Lawler.
She was awesome.
Elizabeth.
Lawler.
I think it was Lawler.
Yeah,
she's
awesome interview.
Yeah.
But it was exactly on this problem.
Yes, a couple weeks ago.
And they have
Security Weekly.
They have an open source solution to this problem.
Yeah, exactly right.
And yeah,
and in fact, right. So if you get a chance to check out that interview, it was really kind of cool because what we talked about was a company that was a startup, and then they got acquired by CyberArk, and they went to CyberArk and said, "Hey, you know what? We always wanted to do this piece as open source to better the industry. We haven't had a chance. What do you think?" And they went, "Yeah. Let's do it. Let's roll it." So they went from commercial, and they're still a commercial solution, but they said, we found a really cool way to solve this.
Episode 58 of Startup Security Weekly, Elizabeth Lawler from
Yeah, you're in for a
CyberArk.
treat. She's great.
She's awesome.
She's
awesome. It was a great interview.
Yep.
And on this exact problem. This is one of the reasons why I added it, because I'm like,
and I think,
this problem keeps coming up over and over again.
Think about it too, right? So then what we're saying is that to make something happen, you have to be aware of the problem. You have to understand the impact of the problem. You have to know that there's a solution to the problem, and then you have to be able to evaluate potential options to solve that problem to determine if they work in your environment,
but you have
and
to
then communicate that to somebody else.
The depth of that problem, like how many places,
and that's the impact.
How many places do I have this problem? And that's, I think, with this particular issue, isn't always apparent. Like, I have a config file and it's got these like secret keys in it and stuff, but I don't understand that that's even a problem. And how do I identify all my applications that might have this problem? It's weird. How do you protect your secrets? It's really the question. I get it because I have this problem in a big way.
Well, and I think it's going to continue. I mean, I think that we see different versions of this manifested in consistently different ways. And so whereas a lot of people almost feel despair at this, I think that we will start to see solutions. I think that the problem is we don't understand the problem. And so as a result, it sounds good, we can talk about it, and it's still a lot of ships passing in the night or whistling past the graveyard. And instead, I think what will start to happen is people will get it, and they'll find the use case, and then somebody else will go, "Oh, well, it's like that one." "Oh, well, we got to do something about it." "Well, it's like that." And I think we're going to get there. A lot of times in security, we're really good at looking at the downside of risk, but we're not always good at understanding where it fits into the total risk basket. And so in our slice, it's not. This is I don't know. You guys tell me where. If I had to rank 100 things just in the cybersecurity world, where would this be? Top, middle, bottom?
That depends on the organization. It depends on the application, the criticality of the business, or your product.
I think it's all fair point, right?
Yep.
So
every business is in fact a unique snowflake. Although there are some unique snowflakes that are very similar to others.
Yeah, and some are more uniquer than others.
Yeah, some are less uniquer than others.
But so now I've got that challenge and that issue. I have to figure out who to trust. I have to figure out how to explain it. I have to figure out how to evaluate the solutions. And then I've got a limited amount of budget, and I have to figure out where that goes. I mean, it's not going to be a challenge in the short run to find things that don't work well. That said, I'm liking the fact, Paul, that we're highlighting things that do work well. I like good examples.
You said that question that is weird right now for me. You said, who do I trust? And I'd argue, trust no one, trust everyone, and trust a select few. And I only say that just because I'm in the middle of reading George Orwell's 1984.
Yep.
Again, since high school, it's been 20 plus years. And it is very much that same sort of thing in that there's this 3 tiers of society. There's the inner party, the outer party, and then the proles. And they trust the proles implicitly. They trust everyone. But the outer party is like, trust no one, because if they do something bad, they're... And the inner party trusts a select few. They trust the inner party.
I also thought of Batman, like the 1988-89 Batman. Jack Nicholson as Joker. Who do you love? Who do you love? All right, sorry. That's where am I?
This town needs an enema.
This next story is kind of interesting, and it kind of begs the question: Are we too hard on people who are convicted of computer crimes?
Did you say hard on?
He did. I was going to talk about going straight.
So, Kevin, what do you think about that?
Cut to Kevin. Take over.
We asked the hardest questions in security.
Man.
All right.
So what would you do?
Do we punish too harshly or are we too lenient on those that commit computer crimes? Sean Tiernan, 29, of Santa Clara, California, was sentenced to 2 years probation but no prison time for involvement in a spam botnet. His lawyer, who was successful and obviously a pretty good lawyer, their client deserved leniency for several reasons. One, when the FBI raided his home, he was completely cooperative and immediately confessed.
You don't want to get shot.
And a year later confessed to the CAN Spam Act violation.
Okay.
And it also said that damage caused by the botnet was real. It was relatively minor. It didn't steal financial data. It didn't extort them. The malware is easily removable. And it only collected IP addresses, which courts no longer consider to be private data. They noted the spam traffic generated was advertising. It was just advertising, not malware laden. And they are obviously leniency because it was just a kid when he got involved. By 2011, he was into his 20s, eligible to drink, vote, rent a car, execute contracts, and all of the adult privileges, which seem to make him ineligible to claim adolescence as his defense, the article states. Now, the lawyer said he intends to go straight. He's enrolled in a cybersecurity graduate program and on his way to getting a job. Some people say it reflects a gross lack of awareness and understanding by the judge of incidents and the harm that they cause. They then go on to quote examples of Kevin Mitnick, former LOSEC member Mustafa Al-Bassam, as well as the infamous Cebu. Yeah. Kevin, I want to get your take on this.
This has always been a tough topic. I mean, if you kind of look back at the history of the internet in particular, it's definitely been a sliding scale when it comes to leniency. And the earlier cases of teenagers going to prison for accessing a system when the understanding of what that is maybe not have been as at a high standard as we have now. The fact that judges are giving leniency seems like it's kind of shifting in a different direction. Is that the right answer? I don't know. Some of these cases, have definite context to them. And the direct one is being quoted here, saying this person didn't really cause that much harm in the grand scale. But then you kind of go backwards. Teenagers do really stupid stuff now that they just have access to the literal entire world. And as we've been discussing over the last couple of hours and every single show, software is really terrible, security is really hard, and now a teenager can buy an exploit kit online for a couple of bitcoins and wreck a lot of systems. Do they understand what they're doing? Most likely not. They're kids.
Now, Kevin,
should they go to prison? I don't know. I mean, this is
Now, Kevin,
really
help me
challenging.
out. What they didn't highlight, which I think is interesting, and somewhat as part of, I think, really poor journalism, and there's two cases that come to mind, and now I can't remember the people's names, and I should, and I apologize to all of our listeners because I'm just having a complete mental blank. But who was the very outspoken hacker that did the Apple thing and downloaded the Weave? Thank you. So there was Weave, who you could argue was persecuted very, very strongly in his case. And then there was who was the other very, very smart, brilliant young person that downloaded the materials from from
MIT?
Yeah, from MIT. What was his name, Kevin? You know. What was it?
Andrew Schwartz.
Yes, Andrew Schwartz, who then committed suicide. And those are two very, I think, extreme cases that weren't brought up in this article. It represents the other end of the spectrum. Kind of an aside note, I think that's some of the problems with journalism is you can bring up facts that support one argument or the other and not present both sides for people, which is why I like doing these shows, because we have a discussion about it and try and present all sides of it. So
try. I will say
we try. We do our best, right?
Yeah.
There's an Go
ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say we've discussed this a few times before about the technical challenges of the legal system, and this could be an example of that. A lot of these stories are becoming very widespread in the last 10 years. People are actually hearing about attacks that are impacting your home, particularly ransomware, malware, and going right back to the DDE example before. is it a good thing that these things are happening? No. Is it a good thing that judges and the legal system are starting to give some of the younger participants in these avenues to put, obviously, that the fact that they're very bright to better uses, that is a good thing. But it is kind of a catch-22 because there's always going to be bad apples, and I'm not sure just saying you're a kid. Good luck next time is the right approach to this. At the same time,
to be fair, when I looked at this, when I read some of the stuff around it, I didn't see it as, oh, well, you're a kid, so you're off. What they said, and I know it's going to piss a lot of people off, was there wasn't a lot of harm here.
Yeah,
you didn't steal data. You didn't you didn't do damage. And so what's interesting is that there are the technical challenges of the legal system, but there's also the way our legal system was the common law system was designed to evolve. So the problem that we tend to highlight is you take any number of the laws that we have in order to prosecute crimes like this, and there's a lot of prosecutorial discretion. And so if you get somebody who wants to make a name for themselves, you're going to go to one end of the spectrum. If you have somebody else who isn't particularly sure or wants to look at it differently, you go to the other end of the spectrum. What's starting to happen now, too, and you bring up a really interesting point, Kevin, in that the awareness now of something like ransomware or the awareness of botnets is probably higher in the general population than it's ever been. But even in the wake of Equifax, every time I see one of these headlines that says, was it now 143 million people have had their identity compromised? No, you haven't. No, stop. And more importantly, and it hasn't been compromised 10 times already? I mean, show me that you got harm from this particular breach as opposed to one of the 200 or 300 others that you know about before it or otherwise. And so what we've seen in some of these class action suits is, and again, this is still not clear, where's the harm? And do you have the burden to demonstrate harm? And do you have to pinpoint it on somebody specific, or is there a general take on it? And some of the courts have gone one way, and some are going the other way. Right. So when this one comes down and they say, look, there's not a lot of harm, and in fact, it looks like he was essentially just running ads and making money so he could go to school. Judge kind of looked at that and went, okay, right way to do it? No. But
was your intent good? Yeah.
Well, and we've talked about
intention matters.
It does. We've talked about intent before, and none of us are lawyers, but intent definitely plays into it for sure.
When you look at police for an offline, if there are a bunch of communities where there's no soliciting, especially where I worked as an EMT in New Jersey, and so I used to talk to the police and I'd say, well, how do you decide then whether to stop somebody and say, sir, ma'am, there's no soliciting in this neighborhood, and I don't know why you're here, versus not? And they said, well, we look for intent. So, well, how the hell do you measure intent? They said, well, we have to guess. And that's always sorted out with a quick trip to the station. We have a chat, and if we're wrong, good to go. And if we're right, well, then we have a different direction with it. And so what we find then is that there's the harm.
So the prostitutes looking to put themselves through school are okay, but the ones just trying to score crack.
It's a great point.
Wrong solicitation. Yeah. Wrong solicitation. Oh, got it. Okay.
Depends on whether they're going to the mayor's house, right?
Or what?
But then let me throw a curveball in this. You bring up a really interesting point. What about the cases of kids in high school or college who are changing their grades? And how can that be looked at from an intent standpoint? If they're not harming the society or the greater world, but there are cases where people are, the book is thrown at them. They're kicked out of school. Their life is ruined. They potentially can go to prison.
Well, and let me just build on that, because I actually I've
talked about that.
I've advised on some of these cases, so I think that they've been interesting. But with kids in school, it's fascinating. One of my kids' friends got suspended from school for 2 or 3 days, and there were assault charges filed. Another kid was mocking him. He slapped him. And the way the school handles that now is, okay, you're suspended, cops are called. And I said, wow, I mean, in our day, that got settled. There were apologies, and you went on with it. You didn't get a police record. And so it's the same thing, Kevin. It's there's a, and it's I'm not liking it. Kids are going to be kids, and at some point, it's not acceptable. But then at the other point, so we're going to throw you out, ruin your life, and you can never do anything again?
I mean, if someone cheats on a test, there could be the metaphorical slap on the wrist, right? But if someone accesses the grades database and changes their grade, ostensibly the same end result potentially of cheating on the test, they could theoretically get kicked out or go to jail.
Well, so now do you see then?
It's a great point.
Well, I want to extend it one bit, because we have seen cases where executives get fired because they misrepresented their educational work history, and it goes uncovered. It gets uncovered. It's covered up for a long time, and then one day somebody does a check and says, you didn't actually graduate from this school like you said you did, and you didn't actually do these things. But they don't typically go to jail. They just get fired. And possibly disgraced. And so, I think you've got a good point, Kevin, in that we need to allow the opportunity for mistakes to be made and regret to be expressed and remorse to be expressed and corrective action. And I'll tell you, when you look at just human nature, that's an area that there's dozens of books on it, and they're fairly similar, and it always comes down to it kind of depends on the context. And that's the way that the courts tend to look at things, and so this will settle itself out. It's just going to take time, because these are the questions that we have to ask. And so as you said, Kevin, is there clarity on it? No. The thing that I always go back to, and I might get this wrong, I'm trying to remember back freshman psychology. I think it was a sociologist named Gibbs. Now I could be wrong on that. It could be Gibson. It was something along that, and they talked about that.
You're thinking like Gibbs from like NCIS?
Well, that's where I wonder now if I may have slightly modified.
Been a crossing of the stream.
It's one of the 11s. It's one of his rules, right?
Gibson,
rule number
Gibson
11.
From Hackers.
Or Gibson playing a guitar, thinking about. Anyway, the idea was, from a sociological perspective, if you look at punishment as a deterrent, it only works if there's a certainty of getting caught, there's a certainty of the outcome of the punishment, and it's meted out within a pretty rapid time space. And basically, our justice system doesn't really rise to any of those particular levels. So I think the counter question to start to explore, which is almost as uncomfortable, is, does any jail time, does any of this stuff actually act as a deterrent for somebody?
Depends on the person.
Because it's almost like, are we thinking about this the right way?
I don't know. But, it would be a deterrent for me because I'm too good looking for prison.
You might have a good time, though, Larry.
I look bad in orange jumpsuits.
Yeah. Orange is not my color, and I'm too good looking for prison.
That was a Mike Poor comment, by the way.
Yeah.
When speaking of ethics and hacking, to put that in context, which we've talked about in having a conference that was largely geared towards those in the Cyber Patriot program. And someone did bring up during the conference, hey, we're teaching these kids about hacking. What if they use it for bad instead of good, and how do we educate not just the students about ethics, but also the educators about what the correct, to Kevin's point, what the correct form of punishment is for this particular behavior, to understand not just the technical details, but Kevin, I think, made a really great point. If you're cheating on a test and you're cheating by hacking into your grades, it's really the same behavior. But I agree. I feel like they're punished more severely because there was hacking involved. And how is that any different? So I think the lesson here, moving forward, as we want to do more in this community, especially, is to educate the students, of course, to do ethics, but also educate the educators to understand this problem, and us as the security community guide both the students and the educators, and allow them to learn in a safe environment. Be like, dude, you don't have to prove your hacking skills by hacking your grades, right? Don't act unethical by cheating, which is a lesson outside of security. But if you need a safe place to do that, there's lots of places to do that. In fact, there's probably thousands of people listening to this show now that would raise their hand and say, yeah, I would stand up a lab for kids to play around in and learn security.
Well, yeah, and there's an interesting point too, and it's that intersection of ethics and legality. You can do things that are not ethical that are legal, and you can do things that are ethical and actually in some cases illegal. And so what happens then too is that ethics it's not finite. It's almost like a bell curve distribution, and for some people, the standard deviation is a little wider than others. And so what you're saying then is that as an industry, or I would even say as a community, we need to do we need to keep having these conversations so that we can more clearly define the boundaries and where you're into those gray areas and where you go from there. And then that over time starts to influence what becomes reasonable security and starts to influence then some of those legal aspects to it. But Paul, I really like the idea of being able to say, I think if we could get more involved in our communities and say, I'll set up a lab, I'll help with the CTF, I'll help host these competitions, I think we solve a lot of problems. And I would open that not just to the students. I'd open it to anybody. And, you know, we see a lot of hacker spaces and maker spaces that are doing that very thing, and they're letting families come together and check some of this stuff out. And there's no quicker way to demystify it. And if you look at any of the stuff that's happened, I mean, I like the Cyber Patriot program a lot. If you look at the way that the National Guard does stuff.
Well, yeah, they were there at our conference.
Okay, so if you look at like
they got the live fire range, right?
Well, if you look at their Cyber Shield exercises, they bring the Guard units in, which is a great chance for the Guard units to try it, but they bring in their commercial partners. And so what's cool then is that they're really testing out, okay, well, how do we work with the Fusion Cell? How do we go talk to the lawyers? How do we talk to the commercial lawyers? And what's great is the companies that get involved, they take it really seriously. Well, then where you go from this is the executives come in, they have typically what they call DV Day, Distinguished Visitors Day, and the executives come in and they ask questions and they get to see it. And that's why we like this live fire range. They get to see this is what the red team's doing, this is what the blue team's doing. They get to tour, they get to ask questions, and suddenly they go, whoa, have we done this in our organization? So I think that's the answer for a lot of this stuff. I think the answer is let's ask these questions, let's make this stuff available for people, let's pull these things together, and then in that, we can have a better conversation about ethics and a better conversation about legality because now they've seen it, they've experienced it, they've seen what it's like, and I think that's a lot better.
Stealing is wrong, is what
we're sharing.
What I'm saying. That's sharing. That's sharing, not stealing. Right. Well, sharing without permission is stealing, I guess.
We're so close. You have my permission.
There you go. It's implied. Nice. Well, Michael, Larry, and Kevin, I don't know what happened to Jeff. I hope everything's okay. He dropped off. I'm not sure.
Segment.
Not sure what happened. But hopefully Jeff's okay. Not Kevin, especially, dude. Nice to have you back. Appreciate you being back on the show, and especially appreciate your insights, and especially some of these stories we talked about. So,
I always love
thanks for having me back. And if I drop off again, look for the ninjas. They've kidnapped me.
That's right. That's right. Don't get kidnapped by ninjas again. We want you back. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, as always, take us out.
Over and